across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. It's me, Jonathan Gullis, sitting in for the great Ian Collins here on Talk, the home of common sense. And what a show we have installed for you today. We're going to be discussing Shabana Mahmood. The Home Secretary has unveiled a 33-page blueprint for the most sweeping asylum reforms in modern times, designed to deter claims and speed removals. Sir Keir Starmer calls the case devastatingly simple. The package is radical, wide-ranging and legally tricky, aiming to clamp down on abuse of the current system and boost deportations. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage says foreign nationals should bear the brunt of fixing Britain's finances, pledging to strip EU citizens of benefits, more than double the NHS surcharge and slash foreign aid by over 70%. He has warned Rachel Reeves it's outrageous to plug the gap with tax rises, as Reform UK unveils £25 billion in spending cuts to avoid them. And although doctor strikes continue, fewer junior doctors are striking, with the NHS keeping around 95% of routine care running during the 5-day walkout. Some are crossing picket lines for the first time, citing embarrassment at the BMA's rhetoric. Is this a sign that the profession is turning against the union? Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I say, we're going to be having a great show, and you know what you need to do if you want to tell us your views on our big question today, which is very simple. If Labour sorts out immigration, will you vote for them at the next general election? Yes or no? You know what to do. 0344 499 1000 is how you can call us, is how you can WhatsApp us, and how you can voice note, and I love a voice note, into us. You can also text the word talk at the start of your message to 87222 and follow our messages on X at talkTV. Now, ladies and gentlemen, yesterday was quite a remarkable day, in my opinion. We saw Shabana Mahmood, the Labour Home Secretary, stand up in the House of Commons and introduce a sweeping range of reforms to tackle asylum and illegal migration, larger than any I can think of in my lifetime. It's quite frankly embarrassing that it's taken a Labour Home Secretary to deliver one of the most conservative statements on tackling illegal immigration that I can think of over the last 20 years. But she had the balls to do it. She was gladly standing up in the chamber, and she did not take any nonsense from the Lib Dems, from the Greens, and even her own backbenchers. The rhetoric has been welcomed. We are loving what we're hearing, those of us who are on the centre-right of British politics, but I think it's fair to say there will be scepticism, and you and I will not believe it until we see it. But I'm going to make it clear and simple for people. I think centre-right British political parties, Conservative Party and Reform UK, should be backing these measures. Let me be clear. The reason I say that is because it is an improvement on the current situation that we have today. Does it go far enough? No. Can it be improved in the future under Reform or Conservative-led government, or indeed potential coalition? Yes, it can. But should we allow perfect to get in the way of good? And my answer to that is no. So I would be lending my votes, because we know that the migration-moaning lovers on the backbench of the Labour Party are going to be doing everything they can to try and get this watered down and undermine it. And Conservative and Reform UK members of Parliament should be joined, united, in telling Shabana Mahmood their votes are there to make sure this can go through unamended as it is, unless she is willing to do some of the brave and bold things that I need to see happening, such as leaving the European Convention of Human Rights and indeed abolishing the Human Rights Act. And why is that? Because I think personally that whilst this is a very welcome introduction of legislation, the problem with this is going to be lawfare. We know the lefty human rights lawyers, Labour's buddies, are going to be teaming up with every activist they can to frustrate the process. I saw that firsthand when we tried to do the Rwanda scheme. And don't get me wrong, I'm not suddenly convinced that all these Labour MPs who are backing this scheme are somehow converted. I remember them opposing Rwanda, saying it was inhumane, immoral, it was going to endanger the lives of people to send them somewhere like Rwanda, whereas in this Labour Home Secretary is willing to send families, including children, back to Syria, where we know ISIS was not long ago murdering, raping and pillaging across that country. So the truth of the matter is that we should be on the centre-right of British politics standing up for these values, but making it clear that we think, sadly, this will never be enacted in full. Because whilst we remain members of the European Convention of Human Rights, whilst we allow the Human Rights Act to remain on the statute books, you simply will not be able to enact all these measures, let alone be able to detain and deport, which must happen. Removals to safe third countries like Rwanda must happen, and it must happen soon. But as I say, let's not perfect get in the way of good. And I'm hoping that my guest at the start of this hour, Liam Deacon, ex-head of communicated press for the Brexit Party and a fantastic communications consultant who joins me down the line now, will be able to share his thoughts on what he heard, because Liam is very sound and robust when it comes to such issues, as I am, and I'm sure that he will have a view on this too. Liam, I must say, I was a bit upset with Reform UK today. They've come out publicly saying they will oppose these measures. It feels to me this is opposing for the sake of opposing, something Labour did when they were in opposition in the last government, rather than just saying, you know what, this isn't perfect, but you know what, it's a damn sight better than where we are now. Am I fair in my criticism, or is there a good reason why Reform should oppose these measures?
It's a difficult one because, as you quite rightly say, it's a step in the right direction. But I think Reform have bloody good reason to be highly sceptical of this. They have been shouting from the sidelines for not years but decades about the broken nature, the fundamentally broken nature of our asylum system. And not only have they been ignored, but they have been, criticised and libelled and called racist and bigoted at every single turn for raising these fundamental questions, logical points about the broken nature of the incentives and the unfeasibility of it all. So I don't really blame them for being highly sceptical. I think I do think Shabana Mahmood means some of what she says, but I think most people in the Labour Party are highly cynical. And as you got to later in your points there, it's highly unlikely that any of this will be able to be implemented. So I'm kind of on the fence about this. I do think this change should go ahead, but I do think there are good reasons for Reform to be sceptical. And I think I'll allow them the space and the time to explain that. But I like the way you set up the question at the beginning. Should we trust Labour now to reform immigration? Because what they've done is they've admitted the first principles of our asylum system are broken and it's logically incoherent. It always has been. Okay, we have to remember that. Why is it that you come here, you get awarded 5 years in asylum, and that 5 years just happens to coincidentally align with exactly the time you're allowed to apply for indefinite leave to remain? The asylum system, the offer of asylum in this country has never been what its proponents have told us it is. They have said that it is there to keep people safe from war and that it's a temporary thing. It's never been that way. The way the law is set up is it's automatically a permanent route to permanent settlement in this country. So you get people coming to this country that didn't choose to be here, don't want to be here, some of them, as we know, but they get this permanent settlement, and it's led to a perverse immigration system. So Shabana Mahmood has gone back to first principles and said, actually, the principles of our asylum system are completely illogical and we need to start again. And actually, I think a lot of people reading this, in fact, that don't follow the news so closely, will be shocked that this ever needed to be done in the first place, that our asylum system was ever like this to begin with. It was always just a permanent, automatically from day one. And as soon as you got granted asylum, it was permanently you were on the track to near certainty to staying here forever. And I think actually some people would be shocked that that was ever the case. So in some ways it's welcome. In some ways it's completely obvious that they needed to do this. And then you get onto the second bit. Well, will they be able to implement it? And as you quite rightly say, what this means is that, well, currently she said that in 20 years, you won't get leave to remain for 20 years. So in 20 years' time, we will be able to deport you if your country is safe. Can you imagine how many claims within the ECHR? People are here for 5 minutes and they cook up about 5 different reasons under the ECHR rules. And it is, I've converted to a different religion, or I've got a job, my son won't eat certain foods. Can you imagine the nebulous list of claims they're going to have after 20 years? So it's completely plausible to say as well that, yes, it's great that she's rethinking the first principles, but none of the steps have been taken to actually make this possible to implement in real terms when you look at how our civil service works, how the illegal establishment works, and how that big network of establishment vested interests that work to keep people here against the interest and the democratic will of the British people. None of those details have been changed to actually make this implementable.
Yeah.
One of the craziest things that I was sort of in mixed feelings when I was listening to her speaking yesterday, because part of me was thinking, wow, brilliant, logic. Like all these things that we've been saying for years, we've got a Home Secretary up there. And part of me was just kind of really angry because I've had these conversations in private and on air that we just need to change it. We need to change the rules. And so many people, and many of them Tories, our lad, have looked me dead in the eye and said, it's simply impossible. It's impossible. And then you get one, and I've always said that it's not impossible. The key problem here is willing. It is willing by our political establishment to confront the civil servants around them, to change the legal establishment, and actually implement the democratic will of this country. And I remember back in 2015, when the Syrian war was peaking, and we had 1 million people enter Germany in just a few months. And I remember speaking to Tories then, saying, this 1 million people will be in Europe forever. That we can invite them in and say we're going to protect them from this temporary war, but they're going to be here forever. And I remember speaking to Tories then, saying we need to change the system so as soon as the war stops and you get a stable situation in Syria, we can return these people. Or otherwise you're misleading voters because you're inviting 1 million people in to stay permanently in Germany, and a large number came here. And then even back then they were saying, no, that's impossible. This is the post-war settlement that we have. We simply can't change it. And then in a day, we get a Home Secretary with the willing, and as you say, the balls to stand up and say it. And part of me is happy. Part of me is just so frustrated because I've had these conversations so many times. And we have to ask ourselves why it took a Labour politician to do it. And I think this speaks to the cowardice of a lot of Conservative politicians today.
Agreed.
You have to ask yourselves why we end up with Conservatives that are so unwilling and so scared to confront some of the most fundamental right-wing issues, or the biggest issues of concerns to right-wing voters. And it's because we've lost the cultural debate. Conservatives always have these strong views, but they're almost more scared of seeming mean and being confrontational and of their own reputation. And it took a Labour politician to stand up and do it. And you have to draw parallels with things like a bit of a tangent here, but Conservatives have been muzzled. They have been silenced, and you have to draw parallels with things like the rape gang scandal, where people were too scared to talk about any issue that was adjacent to immigration, race, and ethnicity. They were too scared to talk about it because the accusations would fly. And you saw that again with the murder of this poor Muslim girl recently, where social services and the neighbours were too scared to report it to social services because they'd be accused of racism. And I think this expands to actually any issue that is to do with immigration and to do with ethnicity, where Conservatives were too scared to confront this for so long because they'd be called mean, they'd be called the nasty party, when actually, in reality, the kind thing to do is to rewrite the system so we can give asylum to people that genuinely need it, not the fit young men breaking into our country. But they were too fearful. And that brings us back to the importance of free speech. Free speech in this country. I think there has been a sort of a silencing of the majority for too long, where we haven't been able to have a frank conversation about this, and Conservatives are more guilty than anyone else. And here we are, where it took a Labour politician to stand up and actually speak some truth on it. So I don't think she's done what is necessary to actually implement this, but I'm so glad she is talking about these first principles and making the points that should have been made decades ago.
Liam, out of interest, do you think she could win a Labour leadership contest? I'm sceptical because I think that the Labour Party membership, and that's the voter base that would take place in a leadership contest, would never pitch to someone on the right. And I think she knows she's basically sacrificed her leadership ambitions to do what's right for the country in terms of what she's saying. I suspect she may enter the contest in order to try and basically keep the Labour Party on track. But ultimately, any leadership contest is going to pitch the soft left. Ironically, the real threat to this policy might be Sir Keir Starmer going.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way of looking at it, that she is doing what she thinks is right above the interests of the party. Or there's another way of looking at it, that there is a fight for the heart and soul of the Labour Party right now. And people like Maurice Glassman have been saying for a long time that reform are actually much closer to what the Labour Party should always have been, and that the Labour Party has basically been overrun by university educated, public sector workers, liberally minded middle class people, and it's never should have been that. And maybe there will be a fight for the heart and soul of the Labour Party. My bet if that happens, would be on Nigel Farage, because he's been entirely consistent for 20 years. And why would you put your bet on the Labour Party transforming into something that it's not been for 50 years?
But Liam, out of interest, sorry, just to say here, the Times have then done polling, kind of backing up what you're saying here. YouGov survey, 2,100 people found that 23% of Labour voters think the Prime Minister should quit now and allow the party to elect a new leader. And a further 22% think he should stand down at some point before the next election. Over half of Labour voters think Keir has to go.
Well, I'll tell you, 20 minutes in the pub and I could have told you that for free. Just talking to my neighbours. I don't think I've met anyone recently out here in the real world. I live in the countryside. Who hasn't told me that they think Keir Starmer should step down immediately. But it was some really interesting polling. All the same, it's always good to have these things confirmed in data. But there were some other interesting things from that. 29% of voters overall said that the Tories were more competent than this Labour administration, and over half said that Labour were either more divided than the Conservatives.
It's quite an achievement, isn't it? After 16 months.
Yeah. I mean, the reason that people elected this Labour government, and I think the first bit of polling shows that they want Keir to go, is that they never really wanted a Labour government. They just wanted something different. And then those second questions that I've just revealed there shows that they were betrayed, because the only things that they were hoping out of this Labour government is they'd be a little bit more calm and competent than the sort of tumultuous Tory government that we had. And here they are saying, actually, no, they're even worse. So I feel sorry for the voters.
Well, Liam, what was it we were told by Andrew Marr? We're going to, on Question Time, we're going to have a period of calm, stability. We're going to have the grown-ups in charge. We heard it all from the liberal elite inside the SW1 bubble, and lo and behold, look where we are today. Liam, you stay on the line. I know you're going to be joining us after the break. Listeners, you know what to do. Tell us what you think. If Labour sorts out the issue of immigration, would you give them a second chance and elect them as a government? 0344 499 1000 is how you WhatsApp, call and voice note. 87222 is how you text us. The word talk at the start of your message. And, of course, you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. We'll see you after the break.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes.
I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
In Great Britain, Jonathan Gullis in again here for the great Ian Collins on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk. Still joining me down the line, Liam Deacon, ex-head of press for the Brexit Party and comms supremo. If anyone's out there looking for work, I don't know if I'm allowed to tout you, Liam, but I'll probably get told by the bosses afterwards, but I'll take my chances. Certainly knows what he's doing. Look, Liam, I actually should say, not to comment from you if that's okay, but just to respond to you, because you were right. You were mentioning the Conservatives quite there, and yesterday I had the same feelings as you. I was liking a lot of what I was hearing. I was sceptical about it ever happening, but most importantly, I actually felt angry because I was there going, why in 14 years did we, the Conservative Party, vacate the field of play? Why in that parliament that I was part of, where we had an 80-seat majority, why were we not doing this alongside Rwanda? And I was amazed when I text ex-colleagues of mine and some current MPs who were saying to me, oh, but we had the pandemic. Oh, but we had Rwanda and we were being blocked every turn. No, that's a pathetic, lazy excuse. We should and could have been doing this stuff while still being signatories to the ECHR, albeit, as you know, Liam, in 2022, I put down a private member's bill saying we should leave the ECHR. I was one of the first out the gate for that cause, but hey-ho, the Conservative Party has a seat, 119 seats for a reason, and I got my backside handed to me because we failed to stand up in the interest of the British people, and well done for Labour having some backbone. Well, Shabana Mahmood for having some backbone. Let's find out how much backbone Labour's got coming to future votes. But Liam, I want to get on to reform again, because look, I think Nigel Farage has done a big speech today where I think, again, he's done another smart move here. He's outlining how, rather than raising taxes that Reeves is going to do, despite promising us she wasn't going to, he said, let's end universal credit for foreign nationals, including EU citizens. Let's raise the immigration health surcharge by doubling it. Let's reform personal independence payments, actually using a lot of sensible ideas from the Centre for Social Justice, and cut foreign aid by around 70%, and deport all foreign national offenders, in total saving around £25 billion, which we estimate will probably be around the black hole that Rachel Reeves has created for herself and therefore needs to fill off the backs at the moment she intends of British workers. But here, Nigel's seen, I think, an opportunity. Isn't this good from Reform, good opposition to actually react to events, come up with ideas that, frankly, I'd struggle for anyone to disagree with? In fact, based on what Labour said yesterday, you think they'll be nicking these ideas, wouldn't they?
Well, I mean, they already have kind of nicked some of them. You have to remember that foreign aid has already been massively slashed, and Sir Keir Starmer raided foreign aid to pay for our increase in defence spending. And again, it sort of links to what we were saying before. I remember back in 2015 when people, the Tories committed to 0.7% of all national GDP to go, and they were saying we can never renege on that. It'd be wrong. And Labour just did it. They just raided it to pay for our defence spending.
You made me shiver there, Liam, when you mentioned the Tories doing it. You made me shiver.
Yeah, I know. Just a quick side point. Lots of Conservatives feel as you do. They do feel betrayed because they were misled by the people at the very top of the Conservative Party. And I don't blame all Conservative Party people for that. But so, the Labour government have created space already. They've admitted that some of these things can happen. And Nigel then has looked at this and said, well, let's go further. Let's do a proper job. And actually, I think that so the good people at Reform sent me this document this morning. It's an 18-page report full of data, tables, graphs. There's a brilliant executive summary at the beginning. And I think what you're seeing here is Reform moving into a new era. So for a long time, they've been great at vibes. They've been great at reading the temperature. They've been great at setting the direction. And now they're providing the detail. So this is an 18-page detailed document of how they would close that gap. And it's quite an extraordinary read. And as I say, things like the PIP, reforming PIP, Labour tried and failed to do that. So it's not that radical. Ending universal credit payments to foreign nationals. When you poll people, they want to see that happening. Deporting foreign criminals, people want to see that happening. I think that would have a clear majority in the polls. So no longer can you have people saying, oh, Reform, they don't do their sums, they don't think things through, these are too radical. All of these things, to a degree, Labour have said there's space to do them, and here they are providing the detail to prove and the maths to prove that it works. So I think it's a really, really good, well-researched move by Reform, and people will be feeling it in their pockets after the budget. Well, we're filling in a few gaps there. We're not entirely sure what's happening in that chaotic budget yet. But when people start feeling
it... We're all dreading it, Liam. We're all dreading it.
So I am, for one, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, great move by Reform, and I mean credit to their research team. They've done the research.
I agree with you. I mean, I've got to know some of the external affairs teams as well, like I know you have, Liam, too, and I'm quite impressed with the scaling up that's going on currently inside Reform UK, a startup that's having to scale up at a rate not seen in British political history, may I add, for listeners' sake. And I think sometimes that the media class here in Westminster forgets that you're there asking questions of reform of a party that's basically had 2.5 years of really being established to where they are now, versus a Conservative Party of 200 years old and a Labour Party of 100 years old. In fact, Liberals, you'd probably go back to 200 years as well if you were talking about true Liberals, although the Liberal Democrats don't seem to really understand what liberalism actually is, it seems, these days. But I think another interesting thing here, Liam, was Nigel Farage did a piece in the Mail where he's talked about his views on the BBC. And I think there is a lazy assumption that Nigel Farage wants to see the BBC burn and crash and cease to exist. He actually makes a very clear point that Reform UK do not wish to abolish the BBC. I think he rightly points out that the World Service is one of our best bits of soft power that we have in the world when it comes to producing news for other nations. Obviously, he talks about the need for impartial news as well in our nation, but says, look, in a world where we have other streaming services, why are dramas, entertainment, sports and education being provided at the cost of the taxpayer, not by those who subscribe, as you would do with any other channel? And makes it clear, again, he points at the fact that he's now got Nadine Dorries on his team. Nadine Dorries actually tried to get some of this stuff through, and there were Tory wets in the cabinet and Tory wets on the backbenches who I was ashamed to be surrounded by, who said, oh, don't touch the beloved BBC because I might not win my Lib Dem leaning voter. Well, guess what? You never were going to. And again, Nigel Farage, I think, has set a good blueprint here of where voters who understand the importance of the BBC brand, and I think there is a importance to the brand, but also understand the licence fee is out of date, out of touch, and it's time the telly tax goes.
I mean, so Nadine Dorries brilliantly tried to privatise Channel 4 and failed, but she at least had the right intention. But yeah, you're absolutely right that every time reform are spoken about in relation to the BBC, a straw man is set up where people basically say they want to destroy the BBC, they want to completely burn a treasured national institution. We can debate about how treasured the BBC is as a national institution, but he's never saying let's destroy it. What he's saying is that if you think the BBC is so marvellous, let it stand on its own 2 feet. If the product is that good, people will pay for it, okay? If you really think it's that marvellous, okay, people will tolerate ads, just like they do on ITV and Channel 4 and talkTV and GB News. They'll watch the ads and because they'll think the product is good enough at the end of it. All we're saying is that the licence fee needs to go. It is immoral that we are forced to pay for a product that many of us do not believe represents us, and actually quite a large number of us thinks that works against our interests on a lot of social and political issues, okay? So get rid of the licence fee, let it stand on its own two feet. And I actually think that that will benefit our entire media system, because no longer will you have a huge monolith, a big sort of monopoly at the centre of our broadcasting system, sucking away business and viewers away from the rest of it. It'll cause there to be better competition and a much better, much more nimble, much more flourishing broadcast system. I think it'll be great for British broadcasting. You just look at something like Netflix, which is selling British content all over the world, and people are happy to pay for it, okay? And I think people will happily pay for some of the BBC content if they want it, and the other bits of the British media system will also get a boost because they won't have to unfairly compete against a licence fee funded sort of monolith in the middle. So scrap the licence fee, it'll be good for our media. No one's saying destroy the BBC, but if you really think it's as good as you say it is, let it stand on its own 2 feet. Simple as that.
Liam Deacon, comms communicating supremo, former head of press for the Brexit Party, thank you so much for joining us. You've heard it, folks. What do you think? Do you like what Nigel's saying? Scrap the licence fee? Do you like what Nigel's saying? Let's abolish universal credit for all foreign nationals, including EU citizens. And are you willing to have a trade war potentially in exchange for enacting such a policy, with the potential impacts that would have off the back of it? Do you think Shabana Mahmood, the most conservative maybe Home Secretary in 20 years, is it time for her to join Reform? Is it time for us to all suddenly vote Labour again because we trust them? Well, you tell me what you think. I tell you what, the texts and calls are hotting up, so call in quickly if you want to get in. 0344 499 1000 is how you WhatsApp, call and voice note. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk at the start of your message. And of course, you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. I'll see you after the break.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis here on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk. Delighted to be sitting in for the amazing Ian Collins. We've been asking the question, if Labour solves immigration, will you give them a second chance and elect them in the next general election? 0344 499 1000. How indeed you get in touch with us on WhatsApp, or call us, or voice note us. I love a voice note. 87222 is how you text us the word talk at the start of your message. And of course, you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. Well, we've got two more great guests coming up for you. First down the line is going to be Mr. Jamie Jenkins, political and economic commentator, who's going to share his views. Hello, Jamie. How are you?
Yeah, good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us. Jamie, what did you make of what Shabana Mahmood was saying yesterday? Look, people like me were certainly impressed, but of course, we've heard all the rhetoric before and has fallen flat on its face. I know that, having sat on the back benches of the Conservative Party, watching minister after minister make promise after promise, tried to convince me that it was going to happen, making me believe at times, and then feeling like I had to, then feeling completely sort of lost after we failed to actually do anything, and rightly having my backside and many of my other colleagues handed to us at the last election. Is Shabana talking tough, or do you think this plan could actually work?
Yeah, so I think the plan itself is heading in the right direction, because if you look at the opinion polls in terms of what are the top kind of issues facing the country, immigration is one of the ones that are up there, along with the cost of living, and you can see that the rise of the Reform Party is partly because Nigel and his team are talking quite tough on kind of the tackling the immigration issue. But I suppose what under the bonnet is what the Home Secretary is talking about. How much of an impact is it going to have? So the first bit is they're trying to tackle with the pull factors into the country, and how much they're changing the residency or the right to remain from, say, 5 years to 20 years will have a massive impact, because obviously you're still in the country. Will that have a huge impact? Who knows? But under the kind of the main headline that we had in the last 12 months, Jonathan, was, you know, we had a record 111,000 asylum claims, and they were talking tough on issuing visas yesterday. And if you break down the numbers itself, I think they were saying from Angola, Namibia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, unless they have better returns agreements, we might stop issuing visas. But of that 111,000, 265 claims, asylum claims, came from those countries in the last year. So it's 0.24%. I think the wider issue is when you start looking into those record numbers that we had. The record numbers are mainly from Pakistan. They're the most common country. No wars there. So I think the rhetoric is kind of headed in the right direction. They need to be seen to be doing something. Will they get it back through the back benches, though? That's the big thing with the Labour Party. What's your view when people like me would say that the issue they're going to face is the legal framework, that it's all very well and good to do some of the things they want to do, but ultimately, if they don't scrap the Human Rights Act, if they don't leave the ECHR, they're going to be bogged down in lawfare. And again, I've lived through that tumultuous period between 2022 and 2024 when we're trying to get the Rwanda scheme off the ground up and running. Do you think that there's going to be potential legal issues here that will delay the implementation, or indeed prevent it from being enacted at all? Or is actually have lots of this stuff already in place that they can simply just enact from previous legislation? So whenever these plans are put in place, legal arguments will obviously ensure. We will see that happening. And the thing, though, is that this problem that we're seeing in the UK isn't common to the UK. So we're following kind of a bit of a Denmark model here. But you've got issues in the Netherlands, France itself, where a lot of these people come from, Germany. So the ECHR itself needs reform. So one of the ways of obviously the UK sorting that out is just to pull out of the ECHR. So that is what the Reform Party are talking about. I think the Tory Party are talking about as well, just getting out. I think ultimately the quickest way of doing it is to get out of the European Court of Human Rights legislation there. So we will inevitably get problems with the courts. That's what will happen with these, because ultimately, when you're trying to deport people, it lines the pockets of these lawyers, and it's a good money earner for them. Well, absolutely. And of course, I think there is some stuff here that rightly has been put out, because Shabana Mahmood also made a point of trying to reassure her backbenchers by discussing legal routes. And I think that's been quite, as you say, overlooked. Introducing an annual cap on people arriving through safe and legal routes. Well, we don't know what that annual cap is going to be yet. Making local groups and charities responsible for bringing most refugees to the UK through a new community sponsorship system determined by capacity. I think we all see that as a potential hole here in the plan that could be easily abused, especially with the charities and some of the activism that's going on
within them, create new capped routes for refugee students and skilled displaced workers, where they've also said the right to a family life, for example, might be restricted under Article 8 of the ECHR, but wouldn't necessarily be restricted to students, for example. So here again is another potential thing. So the problem is Shabana Mahmood's trying to walk a tightrope here, as you say, with her own back benches and these new safe and legal routes. It all sounds fluffy and lovely, but it's bogged down and going to be in a myriad of mess, because what countries are you going to determine to set these safe and legal routes up in? In fact, will you set them up in every country? And as you say, how do you process those people whilst also dealing with those who are already here?
Yeah, and that's the big problem. So one of the things that will probably be very good to tell is as soon as you land, that was what the Rwanda plan was, is as soon as you land in, you're sent to a third country to process. That'll stop people kind of coming into the country. Now, people will say, well, if you don't come into the country, if you come into the country illegally, you should never have the right to claim asylum. And obviously with a country like the UK, where you've got kind of the sea around, it's difficult to get into the country legally unless you come in over on these visas and then convert into asylum. So maybe a grown-up debate on this is for the UK, along with many other countries around the world, is to work out what's a reasonable number of people to allow asylum. And once you reach that cap, that is pretty much it, and then you just process them abroad. And maybe that's the approach that all countries could take, because it's not just the UK, it's quite broadly across different parts of the world in terms of numbers of people coming over. We can't cope, we can't afford it, and I know Nigel Farage is talking about the foreign aid budget, which some of that does go towards supporting this in the UK. We can't afford to continue paying these people. I think I did a piece a few months back showing that, you know, if you look at the cost from 23 to 24, it was £4.5 billion for the accommodation. And if you take the total income tax and national insurance bill of people, 600,000 people have to get out of work, you know, get out of bed, out of work every single day just to pay for that bill.
Jamie Jenkins, thank you so much, there, political and economic commentator. Thank you for joining us down the line. Our next guest, he's a great friend of ours here on the show. I always enjoy talking to him. His name is Mr. Paul Richards. He's former Labour Party Special Advisor. Hello, Paul. How are you doing, sir?
Hello, it's a very kind introduction, thank you.
Are you feeling upbeat, Paul? You know, people like me, for example, how does it feel to have right-wing lunatics like Jonathan Gullis, God help you, cheering on a Labour Home Secretary? You've been you're now part of the most conservative government we've seen in 20 years, aren't you? You must be buzzing. We're going to get people, you know, having expensive jewellery confiscated when they get over here. We're going to be kicking out families back to places like Syria. You must be buzzing, right?
I do think that Shabana Mahmood is emerging as one of the absolute superstars of politics, and is somebody who plainly gets it, just absolutely understands how the issue we're discussing is tearing people apart and is dominating our discourse and skewing the attention away from all the other things that the Labour government would want to talk about, like the health service. And she's got a grip on it in government. And the fact that, you know, the Conservative Party has said that they would vote for this shows that it's going to get through Parliament pretty sharpish. And of course, there are noises off and there are those that will disagree. It's a democracy, you would expect that. And that's fine. But she has got rocket boosters underneath her now, and she looks like somebody, I think, I would take your view on this, but somebody who might deliver a policy that will then actually also help electorally come the election.
Well, Paul, I'm hoping maybe you might start bringing some Labour membership forms around to people like me. Maybe it's time that I defect to Labour if you're going to be this right-wing. I mean, the only thing I need you to do now is...
very welcome.
Well, all I need you to do now, Paul, is...
I'll sign you up.
Well, all I need you to do, Paul, is leave the ECHR, scrap the Human Rights Act, and then, you know what, you've probably got me hook, line and sinker on that one. Look, Paul, my view is, by the way, I thought Shabana Mahmood was exceptionally bold, far bolder than I expected her to be. I thought that she was extremely robust in how she dealt with the media round on the weekend, and then in the chamber I was extremely impressed with her willingness to not be shouted down, to not be intimidated by Lib Dems and by Greens, who are classic virtue signalling, as they always do, Paul. But in fact, also telling some hard truths to her own backbenchers. That chamber looks big on telly, but you know, Paul, it's small in actual size. It takes a lot of guts to tell your own backbenchers, look, you may not like this, but suck it up. And actually, I'm a big believer that most Labour MPs might make some sounds because they make them feel better when they're around their lovey-dovey lawyer mates, you know, to make them feel good about themselves and say that morally they may not agree with it. But reality is, they all want to stay MPs. They're selfish. They all want to remain MPs. And they know if you don't tackle the issue of immigration, you're handing the next election to Nigel Farage and Reform UK. I do think, though, Paul, and I'll be interested to get your view on this, the problem you're going to have in Labour is you're going to be bogged down in lawfare, as the Conservatives were, because of the Human Rights Act and because of our membership of the European Convention of Human Rights.
Well, I mean, it is true to say that she faced down some of the critics within Labour, and some of those voices are serious people. I mean, Alf Dubs is a serious person, Stella Creasy, Sarah Owen, some of the members of Parliament who voice concerns are not the usual suspects. There are also the usual suspects as well who decry everything a Labour government does. But, but they're not in the kinds of numbers that would add up to a serious backbench revolt, unlike, for example, the welfare revolt. And if the Conservatives are going to back this in large measure, then of course that leads to an absolutely colossal majority to get it through Parliament. You're right. I mean, she was very brave in what is an incredibly noisy environment. I mean, I've sat in the officials box, and of course the noise that you hear in there is not the noise you hear on the telly through the microphones. There's a lot of sledging and muttering and murmuring and shouting going on, and she absolutely faced it all down, which is why I started by saying she's one of the superstars. Now, lawfare, I think there's a thing, in politics called Nixon to China, isn't there? Where maybe it is Keir Starmer and the lawyers that surround him in the cabinet are the ones who actually can take on the legal bloc. They can be the ones to have words with perhaps former colleagues in chambers and take on some of this legal establishment in ways that maybe others couldn't, and get things done and get things moving on this. Because you're right, there will be legal opposition, but I think it needs to be overcome for the policy to succeed. So it could well be that Starmer's the man to do it.
Out of interest, Paul, do you think this for the Conservative Party is a smart move to back this? Because ultimately, look, as an ex-Conservative MP and someone who was known to be quite robust on the issue of immigration, you can imagine, Paul, I was pretty downhearted in some ways yesterday looking at a Labour Home Secretary introducing measures that I simply can't fathom why the Conservatives never did, alongside the Rwanda policy at the same time. Do you think that the Conservative Party, will be reading from this? And do you also think it's quite peculiar that the Conservatives, I think, are being politically operatively smart by backing this, saying it doesn't go far enough, but saying they'll lend votes, but bizarre for reform to oppose this? Because if I was in Labour HQ, I'd be now drafting up the leaflets, particularly for Red Wall seats, where I live in Stoke-on-Trent. I would be listing off some of the most robust measures in this plan and saying Reform MPs voted against this.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, we'll get people calling in now, calling us the uni party, won't we? I mean, but I think the grown-ups are now discussing this, and I think the suspicion is for reform that they just quite like the issue to be salient and top of the list, and something they can exploit electorally, and they've done very well at getting people elected in councils and all of that off the back of this issue. But they're not necessarily the serious people that you need to actually tackle it. Whereas the Conservatives positioning themselves, saying, OK, we're not the same party, but we do agree with much of this. More important is to fix it than to cause, political dividing lines. Maybe a more grown-up approach. And I think certainly we welcome the Conservatives' votes, but it is part of a grown-up conversation we all need to have now about how to actually fix it and get it done, which is the most important thing.
And most importantly, do you also think that with this particular issue, we're likely to see change quickly, or do you think this is going to take time? Because look, I think there'll be a lot of scepticism. I think Sir Keir Starmer has created a sceptical public about this Labour government. I think a lot of people will believe it when they see it. But how quickly do you think we'll see these measures enacted, and how quickly do you think people can expect to start seeing results?
Well, there is an absolutely deep-seated cynicism in the breast of the national, mood, isn't there? People just don't believe anything anyone says at all. And I think social media has sped up people's expectations and the belief that you can deliver things overnight. So there is that frustration. And I think that's coming through in the opinion polls, by the way. I think that's why people do want change, but they are feeling very frustrated at the pace of change. However, 4 years to an election, if it's demonstrably shown to be working, that there are fewer crossings, there are a few people coming here, more people are being deported, there's our communities feel a bit more stable and safe, the hotels are closed, and so on, then I think that will get a reward at the election.
And then final one from me, Paul, a cheeky question, if I may. Shabana Mahmood told Nigel Farage to sod off yesterday. Should she tell Sir Keir Starmer to sod off and take over the Labour Party?
There's no vacancy. I think Starmer, as he said, told the Mirror yesterday, he's in it for the long haul. He's there for the next election. Very hard for the Labour Party to remove a leader, unlike the Conservatives, who seem to make a habit of it. So if you were asking me to put a bet on, I would say that Starmer will still be the leader at the next election, and that probably Shabana Mahmood will still be Home Secretary delivering this policy.
Well, Paul Richards there, former Labour Special Advisor. Thank you so much for joining us today on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? Do you like what you're hearing from Shabana? Are you sceptical because you've heard the rhetoric before from the Conservatives previously? Now you're hearing this Damascene conversion from Labour. Do you actually believe they'll do this? If they, how significant a change to small boats crossings do you need to see to believe this policy has been working? Does it need to go down to 0 illegal migrants crossing? Do you need to see hundreds of thousands of people being deported? We've got, by the way, breaking, I think, on the Telegraph, a story here that children born in Britain to immigrant parents could be deported under the government's asylum crackdown, a minister has suggested. Can you imagine if anyone else had said that? I think we'd all be getting called fascists, wouldn't we? Well, what do you think? 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK to start your message to 87222 and message and follow us on X at talkTV.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes.
I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, everyone. Jonathan Gullis here on the home of common sense. That is Talk. Let's go to your text and hear your voice. Jonathan, I wouldn't vote Labour even if my life depended on it. That's Davey from the Wirral. Paul here from Belfast. I can't believe even talk are being taken in by Shabana Mahmood. It's rhetoric. It will never, ever happen. So, of course, I won't vote for Labour because this is just hot air. ECR top trumps everything. Interesting view there. Chloe in Hampshire. Labour's immigration reforms are interesting given they scrapped all Suella Braverman's legislation, calling it all manner of names. Suella warned any reforms wouldn't pass the ECHR and neither will any Labour legislation. And then Dave in Devon has said, the day that Starmer called good people far right after the Southport murders was the day I knew I could never vote for Labour, and they still call us far right and racist. Well, so far, Labour, you've had a really good day yesterday. Shabana Mahmood's sounding tough, but you're not convincing people just yet. Let's hear what Adam on a voice note has to say, first of all.
Yeah, on Shabana Mahmood. Listen, all the talking, it's all talk. We need action now because everyone's been talking tough. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. Do you know what? We need action. And until I see any action, and that's, when I mean action, I mean something seriously being done, then it's just the same old, same old. Anyway, cheers for a great show, Jonathan.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words there about the show. And interesting, again, people are saying they'll believe it when they see it. I think that's going to be critical for any potential Labour success. Caroline from London, you're on the line. Hello, my love. How are you?
Oh, Hi, Jonathan. First time I've spoken to you. Nice to speak to you.
Lovely to speak to you too. What do you think? Were you impressed by Shabana Mahmood yesterday?
Okay, so I've got a couple of points if I may make.
Of course.
Firstly, as everyone said, it's complete rubbish. It's rhetoric. They are doing this because of reform in the polls. None of it is going to work. Firstly, how do you look into illegal asylum seekers who come in with no papers? Number one, you're giving them 20 years before they can become a British citizen. The whole thing is a joke. And she mentioned in her speech countries that she would send people back to. She didn't mention Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, Bangladesh. She didn't mention those countries, strangely. But the elephant in the room is this. There are no gangs, Jonathan. This has been a lie since it began. There are many different people now, independent journalists, who are hanging out in the sand dunes. They are seeing French police bring lorry loads of illegal immigrants. They have seen them take their shoes and socks off, dump their passports, and get into a waiting boat or a boat that needs to be blown up, to go across the channel. Yes. Okay? What is the difference between now and the British Army risking their lives to push back in the channel the Nazis? And Farage said one very important point. A country without borders is no longer a country. I just had a phone call from a friend of mine who works for the civil service in business. They are tearing their hair out. They don't know what's going on. They're getting no direction from the ministers. It's not functioning. The country has fallen. And we need now to get serious. And serious is getting the army out or our navy out, and to do deals. Pakistan instead, they will take citizens back, get rid of all the illegal immigrants, or even people in asylum who are in our prisons, and send them back. We are being taken over. We are being lied to. We are being gaslit. She was very good at the dispatch box yesterday, but I don't believe a word.
Well, thank you so much. Well, thank you so much, Caroline, for sharing your views there. We've also got Chrissy here from Southampton. Just want to squeeze her in. Chrissy, 1 minute. What do you think?
I say exactly the same as the last caller. We have voted Conservative. They've lied. We've voted Labour. They've lied. I've always voted Reform. I don't like all their policies, but we've got to give them a try, because at the moment this country's being taken over, and it horrifies me. I don't mind paying my pension towards people who really need to come into this country. There were people that helped our forces that can't get into this country because of all the economic migrants. And I just think they know the law, they take the mickey out of us, and there's so many other things my taxes could pay for. Disabled, children in homes. I mean, there's so much in this country that needs taxes from us, but not illegal migrants. I'm sorry.
No, Chrissy, thank you so much for joining us here and sharing your views. The consensus on the texts, the voice notes, the phone calls from you, the British people, is extraordinary. The answer so far for those listening to our show today is that even if Labour delivers on the immigration, will you give them a second chance? It feels like the answer currently is no. And if Labour's going to convince people to even consider it, the scale of delivery is going to have to be far bigger than they even anticipated when they first came into office. Wow. Well, that's why I love here on Talk, the home of common sense, because you share us your views. So again, if Labour handles the immigration issue, if they deliver on dramatically reducing the amount of small boats crossings, if you see over 100,000 people deported over the next 4 years, would you give them a second chance? Yes or no? 0344 499 is how you call us, it's how you WhatsApp us, it's how you voice note us. 87222 is how you text us the word talk at the start of your message. And of course, you can message us and follow us on X at talkTV. After the break, we're going to have Dame Andrea Jenkins, Reform Mayor Supremo, sharing us her views on Nigel Farage's press conference today, as well as what she thinks about Labour's plans on migration, seeing as that she is a constituency that has been impacted due to illegal migration, and one of the most robust colleagues I was proud to stand alongside in the House of Commons. So we'll be getting her views after the break. So if you want to go and get a brew, go get one now. If you want to get a rich tea biscuit or digestive, my favourite, make sure you do. And we will see you after the break, my friends. Stay tuned. We've got lots more to say.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
In for the amazing Ian Collins, and on the show, Shabana Mahmood unveiled a 33-page blueprint for the most sweeping asylum reforms in modern times, designed to deter claims and speed up removal. Starmer calls the case devastatingly simple. The package is radical, wide-ranging and legally tricky, aiming to clamp down on abuse of the current system and boost deportations. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage says foreign nationals should bear the brunt of fixing Britain's finances, pledging to strip EU citizens of benefits, more than double the NHS surcharge and slash foreign aid by over 70%. He has warned Rachel Reeves it's outrageous to plug the gap with tax rises as Reform UK unveils £25 billion in spending cuts to avoid them. And although doctors' strikes continue, fewer junior doctors are striking, with the NHS keeping around 95% of routine care running during the 5-day walkout. Some are crossing picket lines for the first time, citing embarrassment at the BMA's rhetoric. Is this a sign that the profession is turning against the union? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I was said to you we had Dame Andrea Jenkins. Sadly, she's had to pull out, but she has very kindly made sure that we've got her deputy, Councillor Ingrid Shared, who's the Reform UK Deputy Mayor of Greater Lincolnshire, and she will be joining us down the line. Hello, Ingrid, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, and thank you so much for joining us here on the show and stepping in so quickly into Dame Andrea's shoes. First of all, how is life as the Deputy Mayor in Greater Lincolnshire?
Oh, it's really good. Really communicating with lots and lots of people, getting lots of stuff done. Obviously, shaping and formatting the team. So, you know, small steps, but we're getting there.
No, well done to you. I think you had your big exhibition, didn't you? I think that's what it was called, Apologies, which saw businesses from around the country, in fact, around the world, coming in.
We did, and it was really well attended, and the connections we've made and are continuing to make, driven from that, are really good.
Well, that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much. Well, first of all, if I may, Nigel Farage has done a big speech today about how he would make sure that if he were in charge of the country's finances, and I'm sure we would all prefer him to be in charge of those than currently Rachel Reeves, who is hell-bent on doing anything but growing the economy. And he suggested, rather than raising taxes, which is the simple lever that Labour love to pull, how about doing some tough stuff? End universal credit for foreign nationals, which includes EU citizens. Raise the immigration health surcharge by doubling it. Reform personal independence payments, so those people with mild anxieties and depressions, for example, would be on back-to-work programmes rather than receiving money. Cap foreign aid at just £1 billion, so a 70% reduction in that. And deport foreign national offenders out of our prisons, which would free up about 10,800 spaces. I mean, how do you feel hearing this? Is this the stuff of common sense? Is this the stuff that people in Greater Lincolnshire will be going, finally, someone's putting the British people first?
Absolutely, definitely. So the people I'm talking to, they just want a more common sense approach. You know, Nigel has set out one of the most significant reforms to the welfare system in decades, insisting that British citizens are taking the priority, they're taking the lead, and that's exactly how it should be.
How do you feel, though, when you get the Conservatives today having a swipe at you, saying you guys are just as bad as Labour? The two-child benefit cap means you're willing to give lots of money to people on benefits rather than actually finding a way of helping those people who are in work. What if the Conservative Party say you're Labour light, essentially? Do you have any trucks with what the Conservatives say, or is that just something you laugh off in Reform?
Oh, for me, I think it's just laughable, to be fair. I think, you know, Labour can raise taxes for the ordinary people, or they can adopt our plan. The British citizens should not have to pay out more while the system gives handouts to people who are not contributing.
And out of interest, we also saw Nigel Farage do a piece in the Mail today where he's talked about the BBC licence fee. He's made a point that he thinks that the BBC has obviously lurched from crisis to crisis, scandal, to use his exact words, citing obviously Jimmy Savile and Hugh Edwards with their legal issues, is probably the politest way I can put it, as well as Gary Lineker, who's obviously brought the BBC into disrepute as well, and Bob Villan with the terrible anti-Semitic chanting that took place at Glastonbury Festival. But he says Reform UK doesn't intend to abolish the BBC. It just wants to basically abolish the licence fee. Do you agree with Nigel, or do you think the BBC is a dinosaur and needs to be made extinct?
From my perspective, I think the licence fee needs to be abolished. I think the government needs to appoint somebody with a record of coming in and turning companies and their cultures around. You know, we need an industry that we can trust. We need the BBC to be trustworthy. If we can't trust them, then you know, why should we pay for them? Preferably, it would be somebody coming in from the private sector who would run a forward-facing business and understands PR. There's lots of good things on the BBC, let's be fair. There are programmes that people really enjoy, but as far as their news broadcasting is concerned, I think there's a lot to be desired.
And so would you be someone who'd be willing to subscribe if we went from a subscription to a subscription model? Would you happily subscribe to the BBC? As you say, it has many award-winning dramas and documentaries.
So subscribing to the BBC, I think it really, really needs looking at. I think there's an awful lot that needs to be rectified, and I think that in general we need to review the subscription as a whole to find out whether we're getting value for money.
Now, interestingly, we obviously saw Shabana Mahmood make quite a punchy speech, particularly for a Labour Home Secretary. Wide sweeping reforms, many of which I'm sure will be very, very popular with the electorate. Out of interest, however, may I ask, do you think that we will see these reforms go through? Do you doubt that Shabana Mahmood will actually be able to deliver on these changes?
For me personally, I don't. I mean, look at how many things have been put in place already and definitely have failed. Look how much money's been spent on these things. I don't think that that's going to work. I think the only way that this is going to work is if we actually have a change within government, something more far hard-hitting, somebody who's actually going to look at really strong reforms. At the moment, we're going soft touch, and that's not what we need.
Do you not think those steps, though, however, were a step in the right direction? That what Shabana Mahmood was saying is at least moving the dial towards very much more the reform consensus and rhetoric and ideas when it comes to deterring illegal migrants? Or do you doubt that these plans will actually stop people getting in boats from France and crossing?
No, I mean, it is a tiny step in the right direction. Is it strong enough? No, I don't believe it is.
And so you would support Nigel Farage and other Reform MPs, for example, voting against this rather than doing what the Conservatives are doing and lending their votes to Labour to say, because it's a step in the right direction, we're willing to back you, even if we don't think it's tough enough?
No, as far as I'm concerned, no, we can't back that. We need something far stronger.
Well, I always love straight and simple answers to straight and simple questions. I'm loving this. And out of interest, with reforms plans, some people might say, for example, that leaving the ECHR is not just the simple silver bullet that people think it is. It could lead to tumultuous disagreement within the EU, where we might need to return people, could cause the one-in, one-out deal with France. I know I'm saying that with a lot of irony, to be ripped up, because I think it's been like, 100 out and about 3,000 in. Since the scheme has been set up. But hey, and obviously that's including the people who've already come over on small boats, and obviously we took from France directly. Do you not worry about potentially the repercussions that could be enacted upon the public if there was something to, if your plans went ahead?
I believe the EHCR, we need to leave it. We need to leave it now. That's the only way that we can move forward with any of this.
And you'll be happy to hear lots of our callers, lots of our listeners and texters have been telling us they are yet to believe anything that this Labour government is going to tell us on this particular issue. Many people still saying that they're willing to lend their vote to Reform UK. Look, I do see at times there's a lot of people in the press saying Reform's support has stagnated, if not dropped into the high 20s. I think that's quite funny when you think they started at 14%. In Lincolnshire, obviously, you are one of the flagship local authorities and, of course, the Mayoralty now in the area when it comes to Reform UK success. Do you think that you guys at the local level are delivering value for money? There's been a lot of attacks on Kent County Council reform-led, and the fact that the Doge sort of was maybe not as successful as it once was. Or do you think this is ironic that many Conservative and Labour-led councils, and even Lib Dem ones, are somehow being given nowhere near the same scrutiny as we are with the 10 reform councils that exist in the country?
Absolutely. I mean, if you have a look at what we've done since we came in, basically there has been massive savings made. There's been massive steps taken forward, and there is still more to come.
Well, fantastic. Look, Councillor Ingrid Shared, the Deputy Mayor, of Greater Lincolnshire Reform UK. Thank you so much for joining us today. Well, we go to one of our callers, Matt in Cheshire. I think I've spoken to Matt before. Hello, Matt. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon, Jonathan. Hope you are well.
I am indeed. Shabana Mahmood, were you impressed? Were you won over?
Oh, I was listening to Stephen Barrett last night, the great Stephen Barrett.
Very good lawyer.
And everything. He said it was a political document, not legal text. He more or less just poo-pooed it all and said it's total drivel, grandstanding, gaslighting, whatever you want to call it. And using the word repugnant, what is truly repugnant is handing in your values at the door and everything you believe in to save your political career. That is repugnant. So when they're all trading in what they actually believe and pretending to be something else, now they realise the pressure's on. There shouldn't be. That describes them, not the policy.
So, Matt, that's a fascinating point you just made there. So I had friends who said exactly the same thing. People who are not in politics at all said to me the same thing. They were really shocked to hear some of the stuff that were coming out of Labour MPs' mouths, particularly when they said, but these guys don't... They've opposed everything in the past, like the Rwanda schemes. This is surely... In fact, some of them said to me they think this is worse than the Rwanda scheme in their eyes, more harsh on people, and they were just utterly shocked and appalled that Labour MPs, as you say, were so willing to trade what they believe in exchange for just keeping their job. Do you think, however, though, if Labour does deliver on this and you start to see a significant reduction in boats, let's say they halve small boats crossings, let's say they deport 50,000 people, do you not think that will convince a lot of people to give up on reform and go back to Labour?
Not where I am, no. The damage is done. I knocked on 150 doors a few months ago to stop an HMO on my estate, and I spoke to pensioners in the 60s, 70s, 80s who'd voted Labour all their lives, and the winter fuel payment was the last straw for all of them, and all I heard was my own views mirrored back to me.
Wow.
And these are seminal times. This is a new era. Both the parties are on the scrap heap, and they can talk all the drivel they like and make all the denial, but there's something coming down the pipeline that they never imagined was going to come.
Well, indeed. Well, look, thank you so much, Matt, there in Cheshire, for sharing his views with us. I'm just flabbergasted at how few people are going to give this Labour government a cat and hell chance. I mean, another text here from Andy and Chorley. I'll never, ever vote Labour again while Starmer has anything to do with them. Reform is for the people. I just fear how big of a hole or mess will be left with after Labour gets kicked out. They need out ASAP before the damage is not reversible. A good test to the do-goodies. Why not have an option tax to pay for immigration, overseas aid, etc., and let's see how much is collected and only spend what the do-gooders put in. I bet it won't be much. Another one here from Sue in Huddersfield as well. People didn't vote Labour into office, Jonathan. They voted the Tories out. There'll be a lot of buyer's remorse. Even if Mahmood gets immigration sorted, no one will vote Labour back in. They have decimated this country. Well, I don't know what to say, ladies and gents. You seem to be giving up. You don't seem to be giving any hope. Dave is another caller in London. Dave, are you going to tell me that you're willing to give Labour maybe a second chance?
Jonathan, you're really flogging a dead horse here.
I'm trying, Dave, to see if someone might give them a second chance.
Well, imagine you gathered all those gangs over in Calais and gathered them all on the beach and put up a great big screen and said, let's watch Mahmood's speech and see how that is going to change your behaviour. They'd have just laughed. I mean, they would have just said, why is that going to stop me putting another 100 people on a boat tomorrow morning? The fact that they might be given they might not get asylum for 20 years. They'd be happy to have 2 years, 6 months coming in, all expenses paid, right? So it's great. It's good rhetoric, as they've been saying, but they haven't got a cat and hell's chance of solving this. Smash the gangs has finished, one in, one out, one in, one out. It's not working. It's just, it would take her 2 years to make even the first one of these things work, and we're then on to the election. So they've run out of time. They've only just woken up to it. Then she's going to battle all of her backbenchers. But do you know what? I'll be honest. I'll bet most people, if all of a sudden the boat stopped by Christmas for some bizarre reason, they claimed it was their doing. I'd change my mind and say you got a chance. But the trouble is, we know that the politicians are no longer in charge of government. So we've only all worked that out in the last 3 or 4 years, that the people we're voting for, they're not taking the decisions anyway. It's these 23 or 24 senior civil servants that are running the show. So they're not in charge. So the House of Commons is really an interesting pantomime, but the people that are in charge are not them. So I think with reform and with people that are talking about a full and utter reset of everything since Blair 97, that's got to happen. But sadly, I'll be dead now by the time this ever gets changed. It's going to take at least 10 to 20 years, but they've got to start there. So I'm hoping whichever party is coming with that, and reforms seem to be on top of it, even though they've got to do it from a standing start, that's the narrative that's going to start before the next election. People are going to say it's more about who's running the country, because we now know the politicians aren't. So,
Dave, can I ask you an interesting question? I've seen people commentate recently, Conservatives, this is, former special advisors and former sort of aides to the party. They've said the Conservative Party needs Labour to succeed, because if Labour succeeds, it takes the issue of immigration off the table. It will show that a mainstream political party is able to deliver, and it gives the Conservatives an opportunity to talk about the economy and give them a chance of actually at least being the official opposition and will be reforms undoing. Do you think that is any semblance of truth in that whatsoever?
If all they do is talk the same language that I'm going to say you, because you were a politician.
No, yep.
If they just talk the same language that all politicians have been talking to me for the last 20 years, I now see through it. It's got to be reformed. Everything that Blair did has got to be reformed to stand any chance. Well, not just Blair, Cameron, May, keep going. All of those things they started to bring in to move power away from politicians, devolution, mayors, and goodness knows what else. It's got to change. We're not a country that can afford that layer of people anymore. It was like when we were saying let's go back into the European Union. Fine, we don't need the UK Parliament then, do we? I could have voted for Hans Fritzl. I didn't need to vote for Jonathan Gullis, because you've got too many layers of management. So we got rid of the European stuff, but I didn't realise that there's this other layer of management sitting below Parliament, and they have to go. They can't even be sacked, from what I understand. I believe politicians cannot sack the chief secretaries.
No, they can't.
Well,
they can't.
That's like a CEO with a rubbish CFO, and the CFO says, well, you can't sack me, mate, so, I'm going to agreeing to stuff on all things the company doesn't need.
It is crazy, isn't it, Dave?
It
is crazy. Look, Dave, I'm so sorry. I've got to go to an ad break, but thank you so much for your call and for sharing your thoughts. Well, I'm still going to flog this dead horse, it feels like. Is there anyone out there listening to talk right now who, if Shabana Mahmood and this Labour government delivers on the promises they made yesterday to tackle immigration, illegal immigration in particular, if they significantly reduce boat crossings, let's say they get it down by half, if they deport at least 50,000 people, if they get rid of another 4,000 foreign national offenders, will you give Labour another chance? Would you be willing to see another Labour government over a Reform UK government? Or would you even consider voting Conservative? I feel like I know what the answer's going to be. The team behind the glass there are all chuckling away because I think they know what the answer's going to be. But I'm determined to find someone in the country who maybe thinks this could be possible, just so we can find that one person. I'll see you after the break.
some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of Common Sense.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan. Top of the morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good afternoon, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis here. Got a brew in my hand, and I hope you do too. I'm sitting in for Ian Collins on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk, and what a show we've been having. Lots of calls, lots of texts, and no one out there, maybe I'm about to be proven wrong, but no one out there is willing to give Labour a second chance. But Mark, you're in Lincolnshire. You're calling in. Come on, Mark, tell me, do you give Labour at least a listening in here?
Well, as your last caller said, Jonathan, hi, by the way. You're flogging a dead horse, mate.
Yeah. Go on, Mark, tell me why. Tell me why you're not. There's no way Labour could do anything to win you back.
Well, I mean, on the immigration stuff announced yesterday, it's all just skirting round stuff again. You know, fixing little problems here, little problems there. Nothing's going to have any real impact on the situation. They're still bringing loads and loads of people in to replace you. So, you know, none of that's changing. You know, I think, you know, you had somebody on earlier, Jonathan, that was saying the same thing, really. You know, all these return deals. The thing I found quite interesting about these return deals was that the three that she mentioned are all Christian nations. She didn't mention a single Muslim country that she's sending anybody back to. She certainly wasn't going to suggest, and nor will she ever suggest, Pakistan, and I can't think why that reason is. But the reality is, the reason she would never do a returns agreement like that with a country like Pakistan is she would get absolutely eviscerated within her own community. That's the truth of it. You know, and this is the price you pay.
She does have, Mark, I think, one of the most ethnically diverse constituencies. We did see there was a very concerted effort from Mr. Ahmed Yaqub, who was leading sort of a pro-Gaza Islamist style politics to try and take her out, and she only won by 3,000. There's been lots of rumours that Zara Sultana, if it's your party, ever gets off the ground, may well challenge her. You think that she'll make certain decisions based on how to protect her own seat?
I don't necessarily think it's to do with her seat. It's more to do with the community, because what you have to understand is, as well, the Muslim community is anybody that really looks at them from the outside in. They're a very collective community. In some regards, it's a very good thing. You know, they do look out for each other, etc. These are quite good values to have, but it also means that they are quite protective of each other as well. So I think this is, you know, potentially a real problem when you have a politician in a senior position that's, you know, necessarily compromised, I guess, because there is an element of that. And I think that's always a suspicion that some people will have. I mean, I'll be, you know, hands up, I have that suspicion, you know, because we see this time and time again, Jonathan. You know, you had Sunak. He was bringing in more student visas for Indian students with Indian heritage. Badenoch was wanting to do the same for Nigeria, etc., etc.
I must say, Mark, I'm going to cut you up here. I've got to disagree with you. I really don't believe Rishi Sunak, nor do I believe that Shabana Mahmood have ever made decisions based on their faith and the background of their community. I think that Shabana Mahmood knows that if Labour have any chance of holding power, they have to win the next election, and to do that, they have to do that via the issue of immigration. So whilst I've seen people like yourself put your points of view across online, I've got to say I disagree with it personally. Nigel, London, are you going to give me maybe an answer I've been waiting for? Are you going to tell me that you think that Labour might win you back or other voters back if they deliver on immigration?
Well, a wonderful good afternoon to you. I'd like to first of all say, if I might, that Keir Starmer, being the ringmaster, can't control his own circus. And to be honest with you, if Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood reduced immigration by 100% tomorrow, I would still never vote them because they financially have crippled and ruined this country, and they're going to ruin it even more and cripple it even further in next week's budget. So why would a turkey vote for Christmas?
I'm only laughing, Nigel, because one day I might find a caller who maybe has an opposite view. But so yes, look, Nigel, I'm very sceptical too. Don't get me wrong. Was there anything that you liked that you heard? Do you think Shabana Mahmood, at least, did she impress you at the very least with what she said yesterday?
No, I think it's a bit of virtual signalling. It's just moving the dictators on the Titanic. As I've mentioned previously, if you want to stop illegal immigration, and that's the most important word here, illegal. We all welcome legal immigration, when people come in legally, come through passport control, wait their passports and say, I'm come from XYZ, we're going to come here, and then they apply, whatever it may be. However, if you want to stop it, there's a very simple thing to do, and that is stop the benefits, cease them immediately, and there's no appetite, there's no goal or ambition to come here, because why would you come to a country if you're going to get absolutely nothing apart from a freezing cold winter when you arrive? Nothing else.
100% reduction, you would give them a chance. I don't know. Oh, well, Nigel, thank you so much for your call.
Thank you.
I'm going to find someone. Well, actually, there is someone on the text. Yes, I would if I see an improvement now, but they've not left their name or where they're from. They're too embarrassed to admit it. Well, if you text that in, call us, because we want to hear. If Labour sorts immigration, can they win the next election? Would you vote for them? Would you give them a second chance? Would you accept half of the boat crossings that we've seen this year reducing, so down to around 20,000? Would you accept another 50,000 people being deported? That would be pretty impressive, would it not? Would you not give Labour a second go? I think I'm still going to be flogging a dead horse. I'm looking at the guys behind the glass thinking if there's anyone who's called in now, and there's no one's called in yet to tell me why I'm wrong. Let's go to a break, ladies and gents, because I'm knackered.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's lovely to have you joining us. I'm Jonathan Gullis, sitting in for the great Ian Collins here on the home of common sense. That is indeed Talk. Well, there's another story that's kind of gone a bit under the radar that I just wanted to quickly highlight to people here because I think it's important and it's amongst my papers. But there has been, and Labour have slipped this out, I think it's a bit cheeky, but there is some attempt to change the electoral system that's being made here. And the changes, I think, are something that we should all be concerned about. Sorry, I'm ruffling around my papers. The changes are to suggest that, for example, polling booths should be put inside schools so 16 and 17-year-olds can vote, and inside universities. There's also been the suggestion that people shouldn't have a specific polling district in which to vote in. They should actually just be willing to go to any polling station within the area that they're voting and hand it in. Now, for me, that is going to lead to wide-scale abuse of our electoral system, because the thing with polling districts and voting in specific areas is you can check who's voted. If you're putting polling booths inside schools, how do you make sure that the kids are making a choice that is free and fair, not influenced by other pupils or indeed by teachers themselves? And of course, the universities will have queues lining up of hard lefties in order to try and vote for their favourite Corbynista or Green Party Zach Polanski wannabe. But I think that could actually then end up backfiring even on the Labour Party, because those uni students are going to want left-wing radicalism on steroids, not Starmerism and Shabana Mahmood-ism, if there is indeed such a thing. So I would be careful. Sorry, my earpiece is just falling out. So I think we should just be very careful about that particular thing. So I'm intrigued to find out, what do you think? Because apparently this is going to be trialled in some of the elections taking place next May. Are you concerned? Well, 0344 499 1000 is how you can WhatsApp us, how you can call us, how you can voice note us. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk at the start of your message. And of course, you can also message and follow us on X at talkTV. Well, whilst we're waiting for your views, guess who we have on the line? It's one of our favourites. Her name is Georgina. She's from London and she's going to share her views. Georgina, come on. You must have loved what you were hearing yesterday. Labour's going to turn your opinion around, is it not?
It most certainly isn't, Jonathan. I've heard ducks quack before, and this is just another load of lies by the Labour government. Shabana Mahmood is a globalist, like the rest of the Labour Party, and she doesn't have the political will to stop the ever-increasing invasion of economic migrants. She's not prepared to get us out of the ECHR, and until someone can do that and put in place a new set of up-to-date human rights policies that are in conjunction with the state of our country at the moment and sort out our woke humanitarian judiciary, then we are in a political stalemate and will be able to go no further forward. All she has done is plagiarise policies from another political party and tailored them to suit her rhetorical needs, to gaslight us yet again, Jonathan, into thinking that Labour want to solve this crisis, which they don't. The policy that we need to benefit our country now is all out, none in. And until we get this, the problems that we have here in the UK, the rapes, child assaults, knife attacks and murders are going to continue and get exceedingly worse. The Labour Party has shown themselves to be blind, incompetent and totally delusional if they think that this kind of cultural cohesion is at all beneficial to us, our country, or our economy. And the only adults in the room, Jonathan, that need constant, responsible adult supervision are the Labour Party. They're an embarrassment to Westminster. Economic migration is already bringing our country and our already crumbling economy to its knees, and it's consuming our resources for welfare, NHS, our benefit system, our housing, as well as being a huge danger to public safety and our national security. We just cannot sustain this expenditure for this anymore. These economic migrants contribute nothing to our economy, our culture, or indeed our country. They are a huge unwanted liability. We're now in a state of national emergency as far as I'm concerned, as we don't know who this government is allowing into our country. And we are all unsafe. And yet this government are still gaslighting us with yet more promises and lies they have no intentions of keeping.
Georgina, every time you come on, my spirits lift, because, blimey, one, how eloquent you are, how well thought you are, and if you don't run for Parliament, Georgina, it will be a loss to British democracy. And I wish any political opponent that you'll go up against the very best, because I don't think it's going to work out well for them. That's Georgina from London, a great friend and regular caller in on our show here at Talk, the home of common sense. Well, another regular, although he's a bit late, and I'm going to tell him off because he's a teacher, he should know better, is Mr. Adam Whitlock. He's deputy head teacher, and he joins me now. Hello, Adam, how are you?
Hi, Jonathan. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure indeed. Now, Adam, I was telling the listeners at the start of this segment that Labour is actually trialling what I think is a deliberate attempt to gerrymander elections, putting polling booths inside schools, putting polling booths inside universities. They also said care homes as another listed area as well. Talking about letting you vote in any polling district across your area that you're voting, rather than going to a specific one where you can be marked off to ensure, obviously, you never vote more than once. But as a teacher, I'm really concerned about the schools. Because, number one, I fully disagree with votes of 16 and 17. But secondly, what I'm also concerned about is how do we ensure the integrity of the vote is kept as strong as it always has been? Because in schools, there'll be obviously pressure group and peers who will be putting pressure on people to vote a certain way. There'll also be, quite frankly, Adam, teachers, and maybe I can say this and you won't, who are activists, political activists, who are woke, rati, chai latte slurping, avocado munching nutters, who will be pushing kids to vote for Zach or Jeremy because they seem like nice guys, rather than actually realising their policies would be totemically destructive upon this nation. Do you think putting polling stations in schools is a good idea?
I don't, actually. I think apart from the safeguarding questions, the disruption to learning, and as you mentioned, the pressure perhaps on students who are not, I would argue, yet fully formed. I've still got my sort of withheld views, a little bit reticent views around the lowering the age, to be fair.
You're like Keir Starmer, Adam, sitting on the fence. It's shameless stuff.
No, to be fair, I do have a problem with it. There we go. I put my flag to the mast. But what I would say is that schools, look, for a mock election, for educating students about democracy, it's a great place. It's a fantastic place. But it's not a political battleground. My instinct on this is that schools have to remain politically neutral. They should. Putting polling booths inside a school, especially now we're lowering the age, I think that risks the educational setting sort of becoming just some de facto campaign zone. And I'm very worried about the impact that could have on student votes. I read something you put out today, and I wholeheartedly agree with this. Do Labour really think that this is potentially going to be helpful for their own cause? I'm not so sure. We know that teachers typically mostly are more on the left as a whole. There's those like me that are slightly the anomaly. But I would say there's always the risk, that if you're teaching young people in a school about democracy and about voting, about different political parties, and then next thing you know, there's a real live vote taking place, there's definitely a very big risk of a crossover there. Of views and influence that could be undue.
Adam, to go to the point that you very kindly pointed out I made, you've seen this in schools firsthand. If Labour are doing this in the hope that somehow it will drive the younger vote to turn out in ever larger numbers and indeed favour them, I think Labour's misjudged this. I think younger kids, if we look at what happened in America, for example, young people were going Trump and they were looking for left-wing activists. I think Zach Polanski, I totally disagree with his politics. Extremely engaging, extremely normal, extremely relatable. Jeremy Corbyn, for some, is the friendly granddad who makes jam. I think he's one of the most dangerous individuals in this country. Keir Starmer's the ChatGPT Prime Minister with his weird tweets that are clearly written by a robot, because I can't believe a human would talk in those structures. And Nigel Farage has got the most amount of TikTok following. In fact, if you put all 649 other MPs together, he still has more followers on his TikTok. So for Labour, won't this actually end up potentially backfiring? Because it will drive particularly probably young men towards Reform UK, and then lots of others to the Greens and your party, led by Jeremy Corbyn or Zara Sultana, if and when it ever gets off the ground. Couldn't this end up actually backfiring on Labour?
I think so. Let me make 2 points of this. One is that, we know that a lot of young people have a big vested interest in climate change and even actively gone out and helped protest. There was big youth movements a few years ago. We saw them going out into London protesting. It's probably going to help the Green Party a lot. And equally, the other side, it's probably going to help Reform quite a lot. There's a lot of polarity in the school. What I would say about this is that it takes me back a number of years. I was quite pivotal in helping develop the Prevent RAP program a number of years ago. And I watched as some schools got it completely wrong, and they would vilify students and report them for having some political views. At the time, I remember when UKIP were a little bit bigger, there was a student who was particularly interested in UKIP, started wearing the UKIP badge, actually met Nigel Farage when he was part of UKIP back then, and the school teachers reported him, and it came to me, of which I managed to speak to that student and realised that this student isn't extreme. This student just has very strong political views, and as long as they can be challenged, as long as that student is open to the debate, I think it's healthy, not harmful. But I'm imagining schools that might be reporting students that have interest in reform right now, for example. What's going to happen to them if the teachers are giving them the sense that, oh, maybe this is far right, or maybe this is, too extreme to have a view like reform, which is obviously nonsense because they're a legitimate party that have MPs in the House of Commons. Why is it that would possibly be considered acceptable to have polling booths in a school where it might be the case that some teachers have reported those students thinking that they've got extreme views? That worries me a little bit because there's going to be influence anyway that comes from something like that.
Well, Alan Whitlock there, Deputy Head Teacher, thank you so much for joining us. A friend of ours here on Talk and great Teacher Supremo himself. I'm calling everyone Supremo today. I don't know why, it's a little buzzword I'm using today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? Would you feel comfortable with your children, your grandchildren, having polling booths in their school during the school day? Would you feel comfortable with the idea of you being able to vote anywhere in your constituency or local authority area rather than your polling district? Do you have the comfort and trust that we could hold potential elections over a number of days so people get the chance to vote? These are all things that are being looked at and wanting to be trialled. I think it's going to be a downfall of democracy if these happen. 0344 499 1000 is how you call us, it's how you WhatsApp us, it's how you voice note us. 87222 is how you text us, the word talk at the starting message, as well as following and messaging us on X at talkTV. After the break, more texts and more calls. We'll see you shortly.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good afternoon, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis here on the home of common sense. That is Talk, and what a show we've been having so far. There is a caller waiting down the line. His name is Tarquin. He's from London. Now, Tarquin, when I last spoke to him, I had to apologise to him because when I heard Tarquin speak and hear how sound he is, I realised that people like me who had used his name as a way to bash lefties and liberal elite London was unfair. We shouldn't tarnish all Tarquins with the same brush. So, Tarquin, my friend, how are you?
Mr. Gullis, how the devil are you, sir?
I'm good, I'm very good indeed. Now, Tarquin, maybe you will be the first one to tell me. Maybe you'll be the first one that Shabana Mahmood has impressed you. You like what you're hearing, you'll believe it when you see it, but if you do indeed see it, you could be convinced to vote Labour.
I have been so impressed by the young lady that I will guarantee you that it will have a polar opposite 180 effect on the electorate, that they see straight through her really crappy camouflage and realise that this licentious, rambunctious fraudulent bunch of Fabians are about to disappear into the annals, or shall I say the annals of history, existentially being removed from the history book, that from Keir to Keir, from Keir Hardie to Keir Starmer, bookended the entire disgusting communist plot to undermine England and the Great Britain. And this is the end of an era, and they are scratching around in the dirt, Jonathan, trying to find any ruse they possibly can to undermine us. But they take us for fools, Jonathan. They think that we're stupid, but we're all way cleverer than them. We just want to have a life, but they can't get employed anywhere else. Come next April, when the local elections wipe them all out, and, well, sadly not the PLP, but the rest of the locals will, they'll all be gone looking for jobs, and by golly, there ain't no jobs out there, not good ones anyway. 0-hour contracted delivery drivers. That is the end of this chapter. Seriously, John. So I mean, I jest, of course. No, of course not. But they are so desperate. They're trying to put on the Farageian jacket. I've just made that up. And they're just going to put on the Farageian jacket of common sense. It ain't going to work. The fact is, the Uniparty is. I hope you're listening, Uniparty. You're finished. Forget it. Go home. Go and get a job in a delivery company, because that's all you're good for. We British have had enough of this nonsense, and we're moving in for the blob next, because if we don't lance that blob, guys, we're in deep doo-doo, because no matter what Nigel or Ben or whoever we want to choose for, and it's not right and left anymore, it's right and wrong, and we all know it. So in the right side of history, be on the right side of history. Don't take any more of this. Well, we're not going to, are we, Jonathan? And you, boy, you, get yourself with a reform flag, because we need you too.
Oh, my word. I don't know if reform would have me, Tarquin. I don't know if it would have me.
I'll second you, sir. I'll second you.
Thank you, Tarquin. Thank you so much for your call.
God bless you. Raise the colours.
Right, Tarquin, thank you so much for your call. I tell you what, Tarquin, I would love to know which part of London you're in, because I hope you and Georgina are nearby, because if you start your own podcast, everyone else is in trouble, I would suggest. And if you're both in the same area and you run for election, God help your Labour opponents. Well, let's have a look at some texts there. Shabana Mahmood will have to overcome the blob before anything will happen. They accuse Priti Patel and Dominic Raab of bullying when our elected representative government ministers try to enact government policy. We need to clear out the civil service and rehire people who will do as they are told. We've got another one here from Mike in Lincoln. We all know that Labour won't get any of these measures through. That's the Home Secretary has proposed, because not enough of their party will support them. Even with Tory votes, it just won't happen. I don't agree with you there, Mike, but what Mike also says is we also know that the Tories didn't make any meaningful changes when they were in office, because the far centrists in the One Nation caucus obstructed, watered down and indeed blocked anything that would have helped. Yes, Mike, you're right. The One Nation wets are a problem. We need to bin them off. Sadly for them, they do come across to normal voters as an homogenous entity and have all decided the only fix for Britain is wholesale change. Well, Mike, you're not giving anyone any anything here. Here we go. Maybe. Which bright spark in Labour decided anger one of the largest voting blocs, i.e. pensioners, with their first act? It's been downhill since then. The sooner they're gone, the better. Phil, great show. Thank you so much, Phil. Afternoon, Jonathan, great show. Do you still believe in the Tooth Fairy, Father Christmas or the Easter Bunny? Because they got more chance than Labour getting in again. Thanks, that's from Dan in Leek in Staffordshire, not far from where I live. No one's giving these guys a chance. I keep looking at the guys by the glass, just not saying, come on, guys, someone, surely. Another one here. Hello, Jonathan. I will definitely vote Labour if they stop the boats. Brian in Broadmoor. There we go. Brian in Broadmoor. We found one. I will definitely vote Labour if they stop the boats. We found one. We found one in about 30 so far. So the ratio is still not looking great for Labour. But Brian, if you want to call in, we'll take your call. If you want to share it, if you can. Or if you want a voice note, 0344 499 1000, how you can do that. Sue, no to Labour, because I'm becoming more impressed with Kemi. I have never voted Conservative before. Well, Sue, I think Kemi's not had a text so positive before, so well done on you there. So there's one in the mark. We've got one for Labour, one for Conservative, and about 50 for Reform, it feels so far. But, this maybe our listeners are a bit biased. Leon from Newcastle. If you owned a football team and your manager was getting advice from another manager on how to win football games, they took that advice, implemented it and won, would you stick with your manager or would fire your manager and hire the other manager who clearly knows what they're doing? That's why I wouldn't vote for Labour, even if they solve the migration crisis, and also because they wanted to go against the democratic voice of Brexit, and I voted Remain. That's from Leon. Ian, in Bridgend, how are you, my friend? Do you believe Shabana Mahmood? Do you like what you're hearing with this tough rhetoric on immigration? Will you give Labour a second chance?
You realise I live in Wales, don't you? 30 years we've had now doing it. Nah, it's all smoke and mirrors, it's nonsense. We've still got a nation of sanctuary down here imposed on the people of Wales.
Christ, yes.
Wishes, you know. So, nah, this is just a opening shot for a replacement of Starmer campaign. That's all it is. Kidding us that she cares about the majority of British people. Nah, we're not falling for it.
Out of interest, Ian, you've obviously got massive elections in Wales next year. Do you think Labour have a chance?
Well, the problem is, Reich Marshal Drakeford, he's admitted he's fiddled the election system now to ensure that a right-wing party will never control here in Wales, completely against the Human Rights Act, you know, the rights of citizens to fair and open voting system. He's deliberately explained the situation. He's skewed the system against it. We all hope that reform will take over. This can be an uphill battle.
Well, there you go. Ian and Bridgend, thank you so much for your call there. Here's a text in from Reg. Wow, I love it when Tarquin comes on. He always makes my afternoon. However, let him know I'm a delivery driver and I'm better than all of the politicians in this country. Well, there you go. This is what our texters are complimenting our callers. That's how great this show is. Daniel in Epsom. Come on, Daniel, how are you? Do you think Shabana Mahmood has talked the talk? If she walks the walk, or do you think Labour have a hope in hell's chance of winning the next election?
Yeah, the ConLab Uniparty is over. It's finished. They've already lost, and they don't realise it. And the thing is, this immigration issue, it's not like a recent problem. The British majority have been voting against. We all realise that we've had far too much immigration of all kinds for far too long. And every opportunity in the last 6 or 7 general elections to vote against it, we have. We voted Brexit, and we've been ignored by the ConLab Uniparty for about 30 years. I can remember the country before 1997. I can remember when there was a quarter less people in Britain. I can remember when it was more homogenous, safer, there was less crime. And the ConLab Uniparty have ignored the wills and wishes of the British majority, and they won't anymore. Every opportunity that we get to vote for reform between now and the general election, that's what's going to happen. And we can all see the decline now and the degradation. We can see that mass immigration from the third world is ruining Britain, Jonathan, and we don't want it anymore.
Well, Daniel, I think you always make, I think we've spoken before, you make great points. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here, just for even Ofcom are going to crucify me on this.
You can't play devil's advocate because this is the will and the wishes of the British majority.
Yeah,
you can ignore us and use smoke and mirrors and ignore our wills and wishes. What it is, Jonathan, you guys are supposed to work for us.
Yes.
And you're supposed to do what we ask. So and for about 25 years, you've been at odds with the British majority. Yeah. You've got away with it. But this is about we're all about to witness the biggest political earthquake in UK political history, and it's coming down the track, and there's no stopping it now. And I personally, the revolution's going to be televised, and I can't wait.
Daniel, do you think that the worst thing for Labour and the Conservatives, and I think you're making many valid points, by the way, I certainly, I'm not defending the lack of action from the Conservative Party. As I said yesterday, I was watching what was being said and like, why did the Tories not do this stuff? Do you think that actually social media has played a huge part here because it gives more people the ability to see more of what's going on, hold people to account, call them out on their hypocrisy, and indeed actually allow the public to talk to each other rather than have everything, as you know, as you say, back in the 90s, directed via the news channels?
Yeah, so once upon a time there was only 4 or 5 channels and everyone watched the television and you believed what you were told. Now, when people say we're getting on top of the immigration crisis and we can see boats turning up and, you know, teams of people putting them into boats in France, we know what's going on. You can't. The ConLab Uniparty can no longer pee on the British people's shoes and tell us it's raining. It won't work anymore. We won't stand for it. We've had enough now. And I guarantee we are all about to witness something, the biggest earthquake in the UK political history is coming down the track. I'm going to vote reform. Everyone I know, my whole family, they're gonna be running this country, and I personally can't wait. It can't happen quick enough.
Daniel, out of interest, there's lots of polls that have shown reform now hovering around the 29-30% mark. Lots of people in the Westminster Commentariat saying, oh, reform's stalled, they've squeezed the Tory vote as much as they can. In fact, some people even suggesting they're going backwards. Do you buy this? Do you think reform's peaked? Some of them are trying to suggest they have.
No, I don't, and I'll tell you why. Do you remember everyone used to talk about a shy Tory, didn't they?
Yeah.
They used to talk about a shy Tory. I was one. But I can tell you right now, if there were shy Tories, there's definitely shy reform. And I think it'll be more than 30%. And, and I just think that phenomena is around today, alive and well. And there's a phenomenal amount of people that might not tell everyone they work with at work that they're going to vote reform, but they are. And I think the British majority in this country are just sick to death of the way the country's going. We can all see that immigration from the third world of all kinds is basically ruining the place. It's ruining our home, and we won't stand for it anymore. I've got children, Jonathan, and I'm frightened of their futures. And I can tell you now that Reform are going to be running the next government. The British majority have had enough now. It's gone too far.
Well, Daniel from Epsom, thank you so much for your call, as always. What a passionate voice that is. And ladies and gentlemen, I keep asking the question. I found one person text us so far, so that's at least something. If someone wants to come on and take the call and say why they would be willing to give Labour a second chance, I'll be grateful, because my question is simple. If Labour delivers on the tough rhetoric they gave us yesterday, if they do indeed stop the boats dramatically enough, halve it from where they are now, if they get 50,000 people deported, would you be willing to give them a second chance, give them a second look in, be willing to see them go into government again? Yes or no? Well, how you tell me this is 0344 499 1000. That's how you WhatsApp us, voice note us, and indeed call us, as you've heard from the multitude of calls we've been getting in today. You can also text the word talk, the starting message, to 87222. And of course, you can message us and follow us on X at talkTV. Before we go, Vicky here has said, afternoon, Jonathan, Victoria and Glasgow. 1. Post the Navy in to protect the channel from small boat crossings. 2. Detain all illegal immigrants in detention centres. Don't disperse them within hotels or local communities. And 3. Deport all foreign criminals now. First do this, then we can talk Shabana. Well, there you go, Victoria. You've just given Shabana Mahmood some terms in which you'll engage. Let's see what will happen. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got another hour to go. I'm going to have another brew, and I hope you are too. And I will see you after the break. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's see what happens after the break. Indeed, with all your great views and opinions, and there's still lots more to say.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Great Britain, good afternoon. It is Jonathan Gullis here on the home of common sense, that is Talk. And what a show we've been having. Lots of calls, lots of texts, and I've had people message me on my own device as well as text in to go, Jonathan, you said Brian from Broadmoor. Broadmoor's a psychiatric hospital. Someone's pulling your leg. Although it might give Labour an idea, psychiatric patients are the only people who might vote for them next time. Dan from Topbridge. What is going on? What is going on? I'm knackered. I just can't find anyone. Right, okay, well, let's get on with what we're talking about at the top of this hour. Shabana Mahmood unveiled a 33-page blueprint for the most sweeping asylum reforms in modern times, designed to deter claims and speed removal. Starmer calls the case devastatingly simple. The package is radical, wide-ranging and legally tricky, aiming to clamp down on abuse of the current system and boost deportations. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage says foreign nationals should bear the brunt of fixing Britain's finances, pledging to strip EU citizens of benefits, more than double the NHS surcharge and slash foreign aid by over 70%. He has warned Rachel Reeves it's outrageous to plug the gap with tax rises as Reform UK unveils £25 billion in spending cuts to avoid them. And although doctor strikes continue, fewer junior doctors are striking, with the NHS keeping around 95% of routine care running during the 5-day walkout. Some are crossing picket lines for the first time, citing embarrassment at the BMA's rhetoric. Is this a sign that the profession is turning against the union? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I keep banging on about my question. I'm flogging this dead horse one more time. And this segment, if Labour delivers on migration, if Shabana Mahmood delivers on the tough rhetoric we heard yesterday, would you be willing to give Labour a second chance and elect them into government if they significantly reduce the small boats crossings and deport? 0344 499 1000 is how you WhatsApp us, voice note us and call us. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk or the starting message, as well as message and follow us on X at talkTV. We go to our next guest. He is a friend of ours here on Talk. He is one of, I think, the finest writers in the business. He is Mr. Michael Simmons, the economic editor at The Spectator. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, look, delighted to have you on, Michael. I always enjoy reading what you have to say. We're going to be discussing the budget because all the noise about asylum might be some good news finally for this Labour government, but that's all about to be shot out the water when Rachel Reeves stands up, I suspect, next Wednesday. Kemi Badenoch standing up and talking about the self-tax bombshell with the freezing of thresholds being extended. Nigel Farage saying, here's some cuts you can make rather than actually raising taxes on the British people. I mean, Michael, just how dire do you think things might be? We know she's now ruled out income tax rises, having basically rolled the pitch for them. That caused some turbulence in the market. We're now expecting, I think, I've seen the word smorgasbord, which just seems really weird that the government's comfortable for that to be briefed around, of different ideas. I mean, how painful do you think this could be?
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty terrible. I mean, look, none of us wanted the basic rate to go up. I think I would align myself with both the Conservatives and Reform view that cuts are better than tax rises. I mean, that's the reason we're in this fiscal crisis is because we spend far too much. But if you're politically restrained in the way that Rachel Reeves was, then I think actually it would have made more sense to take the broadest tax we have, which other than VAT would be that basic rate or income tax, and put that up. But she's obviously not going to do that. So we're getting the smorgasbord, as you say, which I don't know if that's some coded reference to Torsten Bell's heritage, the man who's really writing this budget. And I think actually that's going to make things worse, because when you go for taxes on niche parts of the economy, what tends to happen is, one, they're inflationary, so the cost of living gets worse. And it means that the areas that are targeted, whether it's banks, whether it's gambling, whether it's pension funds, actually feel it a lot more than sort of broader tax rises would happen. So I think what you're going to see is a lot more examples of groups like the farmers, who are really hard done by before? And then is there more political pressure for the Chancellor to undo those moves? And secondly, and more importantly, is you'll find that they dampen growth, and before you know it, her new headroom, which she'll leave herself with next week, gets wiped out again. And, maybe next spring we have weeks and weeks of yet more tax rise speculation. So it's not going to be positive next week.
I think, Michael, you hit the nail on the head here, which I think most people have overlooked in the moment, because they've even distracted by the fact that the OBRs, some have said 30 billion, some are saying now 20 billion. Amazing that 10 billion seems to be found out of thin air by the OBR within a week, but hey-ho. For me, like you say, the political restraint, I think, is the most concerning thing. And I'm assuming, Michael, you're seeing the markets are reacting to that, because Sir Keir Starmer's right in some ways, isn't he? That if he were deposed as leader of the Labour Party, and if Rachel Reeves were therefore deposed as Chancellor, any leadership contest is only going to have to lead to contenders pitching to the soft left, which will mean increasing spending, but refusing to cut public spending at the same time as well, which means inevitably more tax rises.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why we saw the markets react so negatively when the Chancellor got upset at the dispatch box in the summer, because they're worried about what would come after her. The gilt markets, they worry about two things. They worry about the path of inflation, and they worry about how much borrowing, so how much demand there is, I guess, for their services. And they completely freaked out at the U-turn on the winter fuel payment, and more importantly, the U-turn on the disability benefits cuts, because they think that it doesn't matter that this is the biggest majority that our Prime Minister has had for years and years. They're just not able to get any of it through, because the Labour sort of rump backbench has made clear that they're not going to support any sort of cuts or anything that they see as right of centre. And markets are terrified of that. And I should say, this is not just a criticism of Labour. Kemi is obviously pitching the Tories as being fiscally responsible, but she's very clear that she won't touch the triple lock. Yeah. And markets would say to her as well, if you're serious, there has to be some reform on that. So markets think whoever occupies number 11, none of them is going to bring in the kind of serious spending restraint that we need to get our national debt down to anywhere near sort of manageable levels.
It is concerning, isn't it, that we have a Labour Party that simply wanted to make a £5 billion cut, which is minuscule compared to what currently we spend on welfare. I mean, the CSJ think tank has said that if this isn't cracked down on disability benefits, you'll see it rise by another £27 billion by the come 2030, £700 more per resident. Then you've got a Conservative Party. As you say, I'm frustrated by the truth is that the triple lock should not... People need to be honest with pensioners. And actually, the triple lock's protected. We're going to put people who rely on just their state pension into income tax, which actually might even happen during the period of this Labour government. And I would have expected the Tory government, or Tory party, that is parading themselves as supporters of President Milei in Argentina, who was very honest about the cuts he was going to make to state spending, to pensions, etc., to grow the Argentinian economy, to also be willing to make the brave decision, especially when it's basically do or die for the Conservative Party. I think Reform UK have been quite cute. They're not saying they're for the triple lock, but not saying they're against it either, leaving that question very much open. But come election time, I think many would say in the economics world, there's a fear that they would cave to what would feel like political pressure. Hopefully that won't happen. But with the budget next week, is there anything in particular you think that listeners should listen out for from what Rachel Reeves says? Is there anything in particular that could impact people that might not be so easily to spot, but actually could have quite a detrimental impact?
Yeah, I think people really need to look at what we call the fiscal drag, or the stealth taxes. So that is, does she continue the freeze on the thresholds for which people are brought into tax or go into the higher tax brackets, or worse, does she move them? It's clearly been a strategy of the Treasury, and something the Treasury has wanted to do for a number of years is just inflate away the tax-free allowance, just never move it up so that most people have an income that they are brought into tax. And actually, the reason why Rachel Reeves is going for that strategy as opposed to the rates is because they've got quite detailed internal polling on this that shows that people don't notice it, because she will be able to stand there and say, I've not risen taxes because the rate presumably will stay flat. And it won't be until next April or whenever the tax rises actually, or wherever the threshold changes come into effect, that people will be able to look at their pay slips and say, oh no, actually my tax contribution has gone up by hundreds of pounds. So I want everyone next week, when we hear whether the thresholds are frozen or whether they're moved, to go onto one of the calculators, the Spectator will do one, and look at how that will affect you, because that is her strategy, is tax by stealth. And if people, have a look, see how these thresholds will affect them, then maybe that strategy won't work.
We're even hearing now that she might tax milkshakes. I mean, we're getting to the point in this country where I see the memes where people joked about the idea that, one day Labour will tax the air that you breathe. But it's starting to feel like some of these memes are starting to become reality. I mean, how have we got to the point in this country where a milkshake, something that people may occasionally enjoy, is now also up for grabs because of the sugar tax that they want to impose on it? And I think there's also some other taxes potentially around holiday destinations or people. Like
they're talking about
well.
this tourist taxes that will, harm the staycation. And this is the problem, because Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have decided that, well, clearly they don't have the political capital or desire to do cuts. They've also clearly decided they're not prepared to breach that manifesto pledge, so they're not going to do broad-based tax rises. Then you are left with just having to do these little niche things around the edges, and it opens you up to headlines that will stick, like we saw before with the pasty tax. We're now going to see it with the milkshake tax. But I think we really are, when you look at the overall tax burden, it's at a peacetime high. When you look at these niche bits of the economy that you can tax, we are at the limit. We saw this with employment taxes last year. We've now lost over 100,000 payroll jobs. There really is not much more that she can squeeze before the economy really starts to seize up.
Do you think there's a chance we could potentially see a recession? We obviously had the economic growth forecast come out where it showed in the third quarter 0.1% in economic growth. In fact, September, I think the economy contracted, if I remember correctly, the statistics. Is there a fear here of a recession, or is that unlikely, but it will just continue to see very stagnant growth?
Yeah, I think we're not quite in recession territory yet. I think this budget is not going to be good for growth, especially with other things coming down the line like the employment rights bill. But I think the economy is sort of just strong enough that it's going to keep treading water, maybe growing a little bit, but in per capita terms, and on what makes people actually feel wealthier, that's going to stay flat and be very stagnant. And to be honest, in my mind, that's almost as bad as being in recession.
No, indeed. And then final question from me, sorry, Mike, on this is, do you think that there is votes in being honest with the British public? There'll be many politicians who say that we need to be honest about the fiscal situation, but when push comes to shove, voters just simply don't want to hear it. Or do you think politicians, in my mind, treat the public for fools, and actually the public are willing to have grown-up conversations as long as you present the facts fairly and honestly and show what the trade-offs are?
I've actually got slight sympathy for politicians here. I mean, as much as I would like Kemi, as we were talking about, to do something on the triple log, I can understand why she doesn't want to, because it would be politically, very difficult. And then on the left, you've got over half the country wanting things like wealth taxes, even when they're told that they would actually bring in less revenue. So I actually think the public needs to have a conversation about what size of state we want, and are we as a public prepared to pay for it? Because if we want to keep spending at the levels that we've become accustomed to, then taxes actually just will have to go up more than is even being proposed. And I actually think that's an issue for the wider public, and maybe after the budget, voters will start to think about that.
Michael Simmons, economic editor at The Spectator, thank you so much for joining us today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? How fearful are you of Rachel Reeves' budget? 0344 499 1000 if you want to WhatsApp, if you want a voice note, and if you want to call. 87222 is how you text us, the word talk at the start of your message. And of course, you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. After the break, Dr. Kieran Mullen, Conservative MP, joins us to share his views on what Kane Badenoch's been saying this morning and whether he's happy with what Shabana Mahmood's saying. Would he be willing to vote for Labour? I suspect we know the answer, but we'll ask it anyway. I'll see you after the break.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis in for the great Ian Collins here on the home of common sense. That is Talk. And what an array of guests, calls, texts, voice notes even that we've been having with you today. But we go to our next guest. His name is Dr. Kieran Mullen. He is the Conservative Member of Parliament and he is a Shadow Minister. Hello, Kieran. How are you?
Hello, Jonathan. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good, and thank you so much for coming on. Now, Kemi Badenoch made a big speech today where she has pointed out the stealth tax bombshell coming. Michael Simmons, the economic editor for The Spectator, backing Kemi up there by saying that Rachel Reeves is likely to end up, at the very least, freezing tax thresholds beyond the promise that she made, which was originally to see them rise from 2028, dragging millions more people potentially into particularly that higher income tax bracket, but indeed, in fact, the state pensioners, who maybe some people just live on for the very first time in their lives, could be paying the pension tax. How serious and dangerous is this?
Well, I think we all know that there's going to be tax rises. It's hard to keep track of what they are. Government are signalling through the media, even though they claim not to be, what those different tax rises are going to be. But tax rises, it seems, are absolutely inevitable, and it's entirely as a result of the decisions that this Labour government has taken and the complete mess they've made of the economy since they've been in. And that isn't, my interpretation. Rachel Reeves clearly said at the last budget, we've wiped the slate clean. Everything now is on us. And those are her words in interviews that she gave at that time. And it's, I think, the one area I think has had the biggest impact is their tax on jobs, that tax on national insurance for employers. I've spoken to so many employers in my own constituency who either haven't hired, haven't been able to give salaries. When people leave, they haven't replaced them. And that's just suppressed economic growth and jobs across the country.
Well, for you, Kieran, in your type of constituency, you'll have, I'm sure, a lot of people who want to do staycations or indeed a hospitality sector where people want to enjoy the south coast of our great country. I mean, just how damaging has this jobs tax been, particularly on the hospitality sector?
Yeah, and hospitality is a major part of the economy in my constituency, both in the seafront, in Bexhill, and then also in the historic town Battle. It's a major part of the economy. And I've spoken to so many pub owners, retail owners, kind of shops you might pop in to buy things when you're visiting the countryside and the seaside. And every single one of them are clear that what a huge damaging impact it's had on their ability to make ends meet. And it isn't even just the business sector, it's the charitable sector, the hospice sector. Those are other sectors that I've spoken to. The care sector, I've got care companies and care homes in my constituency. It's got quite an old population on the coast, and we have more than the average amount of people who get care either in their own homes or in some kind of setting. And across the board, it's been extremely difficult for all of them.
Well, as you say, Kieran, despite the promises that were made by the Chancellor, there have been sectors, even the police, our schools, our hospitals, that were promised that the increase in national insurance for employers, who are, as you and I know, working people, despite what the Chancellor tries to say, that the national insurance increase means that we're meant to be fully covered for certain public services. They never have been, have they? You've now got schools, I'm sure, having to decide if they've got to let more teaching assistants or indeed teachers go. Care homes deciding whether they've got to let staff go or indeed close altogether. I mean, just how serious is this crippling our frontline services?
Yeah, and we know, despite pledging to increase the number of teachers during the general election in their manifesto, overall the number of teachers has gone down. The number of police officers, I understand, it is down slightly as well. And it isn't just the school sector; it's the early years and nursery settings. I was visiting a nursery actually just in the last week, who said how difficult it's been for them, how it's really pushing them to keep quality staff, people that are experienced at doing their job. When actually, and at the same time, minimum wage increases across the board. Now, we all want to see a minimum wage that helps people live, that's affordable, but actually what you're doing is creating a situation where across the bands then, people slightly above the minimum wage want to be paid a little bit more and the people above them want to be paid a bit more. And when the economy is thriving and we're roaring away, those are the sorts of things the economy can absorb perhaps sometimes. But this is a point where they've crashed our economic growth down. The last 2 quarters, it's either 0% one quarter, 0.1% another quarter, absolutely crawling along. And that's because of the decisions that they've been taking.
Do you think, Kieran, this could be Rachel Reeves' last budget? Do you think she'll be a sacrificial lamb for Sir Keir Starmer's last roll the dice to save himself?
Well, I think if she absolutely clearly breaks a manifesto commitment and puts taxes up, then on working people, which was absolutely clear they said they weren't going to do. I mean, I think they have already. I think, whether they will describe it as that, the national insurance increase on employers, actually, even the OBR said, has an impact on the wages of working people. But let's let them get away with that technicality. If they genuinely, legitimately, in a totally unarguable way, put up taxes on working people, that's a clear commitment broken in the manifesto. I think she has to go. If she puts up taxes, she has to go. Especially because, as I said, she said herself a year ago, anything else that happens from here on in is on me. It's on us. It's, the slate's been wiped clean. I think she'll have it would just be untenable for her to carry on. Because actually, what businesses need is confidence that what a chancellor tells them is going to be done. Now, of course, across the whole of a parliament, you're in parliament with us, Jonathan, you know that a government all the time can't meet all of its manifesto commitments across the whole term of parliament, COVID being a very good example of that. But for so quickly to have made so many commitments that they've broken and in such a chaotic way, it just leaves investors and business leaders not sure what's going to happen. I know so many people who just in their personal lives are holding back from spending decisions of all sorts of sizes because they just don't know what's going to happen in this budget, and so many different things have been put into the press and then taken back and then put back in again. It's like the yo-yo budget, I think someone's called it. It's been just chaotic.
Yeah, I saw the Speaker refer to it as the hokey-cokey budget. I mean,
yes.
the briefing has been extraordinary, and I saw even some Labour MPs trying to suggest it's the media's fault for reporting it. Well, the media don't make these reports up. Yeah. Someone gives them to us here in the media, and that will be Labour special advisors and indeed Labour ministers briefing off the record in order to test the weather vane of what they think. Are you worried, Kieran, in the sense that if Keir Starmer does go, and I think he's in severe danger after May, I think that he is unlikely to lead Labour into the next election, a Labour leadership contest is only going to see them pitching left to their members, who are the electorate in that first instance. It will see more spending commitments, a complete refusal to any serious cuts, particularly to welfare, and therefore inevitably lead to even further tax rises.
Yeah, and what we're showing as the Conservatives is there is an alternative. You can set out clear, sensible savings in spending. So, for example, on welfare, £23 billion that we could be saving by not allowing people to automatically get sickness benefits for what you might call lower level mental health conditions like anxiety, for example. The international aid spending, that we're going to reduce that further, just getting the civil service back down to the size it was pre-pandemic. Again, not some swinging cut, just bring it back down to the level it already was before in recent history. And so in total, we've got identified £48 billion worth of savings. That's the kind of thing you could be doing. At the same time, not only did Labour failure to cut the welfare budget, she's now almost certainly, from what you read online, is going to be looking at getting rid of the 2-child benefit cap, which is going to cost yet more billions of pounds that we just don't have at the minute. And so my worry, as you said, Jonathan, is whoever might replace Keir, and I think he is in big trouble, they will just be even more left-wing, because the membership of the Labour Party is still going to vote for those sorts of unaffordable spending commitments that future generations pay for.
Now, Kieran, if I may, obviously Nigel Farage also made a speech today. Your political frenemies I suspect is how I would phrase it. He suggested a further £25 billion of savings. I think the Conservatives and Reform UK are talking the same language roughly around personal independence payments for mild anxieties. But there is the doubling of the immigration health surcharge for the NHS. There is the ending of all universal credit for foreign nationals, including those who are EU citizens. There is cutting foreign aid to just £1 billion. And there is the deportation of all foreign national offenders, something I know that's a commitment from the Conservative Party too. Wouldn't it just be good for you guys to get in a room together and you could suggest even bigger, maybe £70 billion worth of savings, and finally see the centre-right working together?
Well, I think we're the centre-right of the Conservative Party, and it's our job to keep putting forward a whole suite of credible policies. It's interesting to see Nigel and Reform kind of chasing actually some of our announcements, for example, around welfare. But I understand they're still committed to lifting the two-child benefit cap. So that is, a spending commitment that they're making there. And some things sound good, but you have to think through the reality of them. For example, EU nationals claiming universal credit. It sounds good, but you have to remember there's more than 1 million Brits in Europe who are getting to claim benefits as a result of that reciprocal arrangement. So, we have to think through, do we really want to leave very many of our relatives, people that we all know who are living in Europe, suddenly not having access to any kind of support? So I'm just not sure those policies always pan out. That absolutely right, we should all be holding Labour to account, but I think we're the ones that are coming up with consistent, credible policies that are workable, and they've got the experience of government. Nigel himself has said he's wanting more Conservatives with the experience of government to come over because he knows his team doesn't have it. It's a bit of a one-man band. So I understand why people are frustrated with us, and we did get things wrong, but I think we are absolutely laying out now across all different areas of government, in the health service, education, immigration, and importantly, the economy, really clear, credible policies.
And final one from me, Kieran. Shabana Mahmood talked very tough yesterday. I mean, some might say the most right-wing chat from a Home Secretary in the last 20 years. You can imagine me, Kieran, you know me well. I was tearing my hair out. There were lots of things, not that I've got much left, but I was tearing my hair out because
more than me, Jonathan, more than me.
Well, I was tearing my hair out because I was jealous because I thought this is stuff that we should have done in government. But I'm not here to rehash it because I know you will rightly say that we, as you've already said, we got things wrong and we should have done much more on the issue of immigration. But Kemi Badenoch has said that she's willing to lend Conservative votes like yours to help get this over the line, because we know that their migration-loving backbench Labour MPs are inevitably going to rebel. How big? We'll wait and see. Do you believe, first of all, that Shabana Mahmood will actually be able to deliver, or do you think that whilst we're signatories of the ECHR, whilst we have the Human Rights Act, inevitably she, as we were, found out, will be bogged down in lawfare? And secondly, do you think that some commentators suggest that if Shabana Mahmood succeeds in immigration, it will help the Conservatives revive, because it will take immigration off the table? Danny Finkelstein was saying that to Times Radio earlier today. Or do you think that the reality is that if Labour succeed, that's good for the country, but doesn't suddenly mean a revival for the Conservatives? You still have to work hard to earn back the trust of people.
Well, I want Shabana to succeed. I think the whole country does, really, because none of us want this issue to carry on in the way that it is. Not just because of the politics, but because it's the wrong thing to be happening. It's wrong that so many people are able to come here. It's wrong from the perspective of people in this country that are paying for that. It's also wrong to the very many other people who do it the right way, who still to this day will pay the visa charge, who will get the right qualifications, meet all the requirements to come and work here as a professional person. And there are things that Shabana's put forward that we hadn't got on our radar. For example, lengthening making refugee status temporary, doubling the amount of time to 20 years, I think she said, that before you could claim any other kind of status. Those things are good. But this is tinkering. Let's be honest, this is tinkering. And the vast majority of what she has laid out, I do not believe she'll be able to achieve because of the ECHR. The government can say what it wants about how the different rights should be interpreted. But ultimately, if the EU courts think they should be interpreted differently, they remain the higher authority, and our government has to comply with that. So I for a long time, have thought we needed to leave the ECHR. It actually was during my time helping to get the Rwanda bill through Parliament that I really spent time reading the judgments of these judges that just seemed just completely unreasonable to me. For example, the article that says you can't be subjected to inhumane or degrading treatment, which is clearly set up to prevent people from being tortured or other kinds of horrible things. To say that if you can't have access to healthcare that meets your needs in another country, you can't be deported, that is clearly not the intent of that original article. And I just don't think they'll ever be willing to reform. And so I think we have to leave it. And that's the only way you'll be able to make these changes. Doesn't mean we won't have fairness and a system and courts, just like very many other countries manage. Canada, America, Australia, New Zealand, they all manage to have decent sets of laws that everyone thinks are reasonable and fair without another court with other judges coming in and tearing it up when it suits them.
Just very quickly, Kieran, sorry, if depending on how Shabana Mahmood presents the legislation that she will potentially have to bring forward, if it's done in a way that's cooperative with the Conservative Party, so the elements that you guys are willing to support, you'd be willing to vote for those things if she does it in a way that means that you can vote for this.
In principle, if we think it's overall going to make a positive impact, then I think we should look very carefully at that. I don't want to say, before we actually see what that, what it's like in Parliament. Within one bill, there's things you really, really don't like, things you do like, and how you weigh up whether or not you vote for it. But I think we should try our best to help this government because, as you say, the Labour MPs are not going to get behind the tougher stuff that needs to be done.
Kieran Mullen, Dr. Kieran Mullen, I should say, sorry, Member of Parliament for Bexon and Battle. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show today. We're going to go to a quick break and then we'll get back to talking about these junior doctor strikes and whether or not they're succeeding. 0344 499 1000. If you want to call, WhatsApp or voice note, what did you think of what Dr. Kieran Mullen said? Do you think the Conservative Party is making the right noises, being pragmatic, being a good opposition? Do you think that they should be taken more seriously because they're the ones talking on the economy about making the tough choices in terms of cuts? 87222 is how you can text us the word talk at the starting message, or indeed message and follow us on X at talkTV.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, Great Britain. It's Jonathan Gullis here, in for Ian Collins on the home of Common Sense, that is Talk. What a great show we've been having with you so far. We go to our next story. I'm keen to make sure we give time to our next guest. His name is Dr. Onkar Shahota, Labour Party politician, but also an NHS GP. Hello there, Doctor. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. Look, obviously, the big news here is about the junior doctor strike that's been continuing. And quite remarkably, we found out that about 95% of the NHS operation, as it were, is continuing as normal. And it seems that many junior doctors are not necessarily on the picket lines as has been historically. Do you think the BMA has overreached here?
I think the BMA is a trade union and is responding to the membership. I know from first hand that it's working safely because my own granddaughter was admitted to hospital over the weekend, and she felt I felt very safe, and the doctors were there. So I think no one's lives were being put at risk. I think people's operating lists may have gone up, right, and which is significant. But I don't think anyone's life is at risk, right? So doctors have been responsible. But the other important thing is that rather than being involved in a media warfare, the Secretary of State for Health and the doctors and the BMA should sit down across the table and sort out. It's not just about money, it's about working conditions, about training and the issues, right? And I think to just simplify this about money isn't good enough.
I saw one stat which shocked me, which is resident doctors make about half the medical workforce in the NHS, which I wasn't quite aware, I don't know why, of how large that is. And obviously have up to 8 years experience working in a hospital doctor or 3 years as a GP general practitioner. I mean, Wes Streeting, as you say, has accused those striking of, quote, inflicting pain and misery on patients, and basically has inferred, obviously, patients being held to ransom. Do you think Wes Streeting has been unhelpful in adopting what he probably would have attacked the Conservative government previously of using unhelpful rhetoric? And when, as you say, this is about just trying to have a common sense conversation.
I think that those are very emotive terms, and I wouldn't use them. For example, this is a group of people who've gone to medical school, and when they went to medical school, they were asked, why do you want to do medicine? And the reason they said, we're interested in science, we want to work with people. I don't believe that any doctor is in the job of medicine in order to inflict pain. These are very emotive terms and not very helpful in negotiation. What you really need to say is, look, what are the issues here? What can we do? And be honest and sincere in those negotiations. And I think doctors have a role to do that also, by the way. But I think there's no doctor around here who wants to inflict pain or suffering on their patients. They are frustrated by the system, and this is ultimately about retaining doctors in the healthcare system so we can have a healthcare system which the people can be proud of.
Out of interest, so there will be people who will say that your doctors are being greedy, junior doctors that is. They already had the 28.9% pay increase award. They're now calling for another 26% on top of the 28.9%. This is just about money. This is all about greed, and it's unaffordable, and doctors should realise the economy is in a difficult situation. You've had record investment in a one-off, £25 billion increase in NHS funding. That shouldn't just go on wages. It should be going on increased technology, new equipment, new medicines that can make a big difference. What would you say to people, probably a lot of our listeners, who would criticise doctors for basically thinking about themselves rather than their patients?
Well, look, we need to put it in context. The doctors have been on a 6-year university course rather than a 3-year one. They leave with bigger loans than other students, other graduates. Secondly, that their pay salaries may not just in terms of basic salary, but it's also the number of hours they do, the out-of-on-call hours, the additional hours. And it is about retaining doctors. How many doctors are leaving the NHS? And also the United Kingdom is in an international market force. Australia, Canada, and those countries offer a much better working condition. I think ultimately it isn't that money, it's better working conditions also. When doctors have done 2 years training, there are 10,000 of them applying, 30,000 of them applying for 10,000 jobs. So there's not enough training jobs, there's not enough opportunities for them. And look, we need these doctors to be happy. We can't regulate them just through money. We need to regulate them through working conditions, and also making sure they choose to work in this country rather than going overseas. And then one other thing is that we rely upon doctors coming over from overseas to maintain our NHS. Since 1948, we have been net importer of doctors and nurses from other parts of the world. Why is that?
Well, I was interested you raised that, because I was keen to ask you, if I may. Obviously, we've heard some extremely tough rhetoric from the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, yesterday when it comes to illegal migration. And there is even today a Telegraph reporting that if migrants who have lived here have children who are born here, even those children could be deported along with their parents. Are you deeply concerned and troubled as someone who is a Labour Party supporter about the rhetoric being used by the Home Secretary? Do you think it is adopting the language of reform of the Conservatives? The fact that even Tommy Robinson was praising what Shabana Mahmood announced yesterday, does that make you feel uncomfortable?
It makes me very uncomfortable, and it makes me very uncomfortable in the sense that I came to this country, my father came to this country, I went to medical school here and have contributed. I think Mr. Hamza, the chairman of the reform group, his father was doctor also. Rishi Sunak, right? His mother and father were in the healthcare system. So we've all come and worked here, okay? And I think we need to make ourselves that if you work in this country, you contribute to the country, you feel safe here. And the whole thing about, I think, where we've gone wrong is that we should be talking about integration, and people who come here should be welcome. And we all need to make the effort of integration. Even people who've settled this country from overseas should say, look, we've come to make England our country, our kingdom our country. Let's integrate here. And I think we got something wrong in our multicultural system, and which is debate for a different thing. But I think it is about making people welcome who are contributing to society, and that they are equal in society rather than two-tier society. That would be disastrous for us.
Would you like to see Shabana Mahmood dial down some of the rhetoric, maybe even apologise for some of the things that she said, and see a rethink on plans around both illegal and legal migration? Or do you accept that she has to stick the course if Labour's going to have any chance of winning the next election?
I think we all need to tone down, that we need to talk about this thing in a very responsible way, and not make the country unwelcome or create the environment, right, where people feel unsafe or become unwelcome. I mean, look, we all need to tone this down and take out the threatening nature of the conversation which we have in place at the moment.
Do you think it will have the rhetoric that's being used at the moment? Do you think, or is it indeed even having an impact on NHS recruitment from what you can see already?
Of course, I think we already are seeing that. People aren't choosing to come to this country. They'd rather go to Australia, Canada, where they have bigger pay salary and also better weather and better working conditions. We as a country have the lowest number of doctors and nurses to the population compared to most European countries. We don't look after our workforce in the NHS. And I think on the NHS generally, I would say that we need to have an honest debate with the people of this country of what the NHS is about, what are we expecting from the NHS, and how do we deliver it. And any government who does that will be a brave government, because people don't want to have that conversation, but we need to be brave about it and have a conversation. What the NHS is about, and where does the line between healthcare and social services is drawn. We've got it all wrong, and I think we need to sort this out.
Dr. Onkar Sahota, thank you so much for joining us here on Talk today. Well, Adrian, what do you think from what you're hearing? Do you think that the junior doctor strike has been one step too far for the British people? Has the British Medical Association, the BMA, the trade union, overstepped the mark, wanting a 26% pay increase on top of the 28.9% they received last year? Do you agree with Wes Streeting saying that this is inflicting pain and misery on patients and holding them to ransom? 0344 499 1000 is how you WhatsApp us, voice note us and call us. 87222 is how you text us with the word talk with the starting message, and you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. After the break, more of your texts and more of your calls, as well as getting ready for the amazing Peter Cardwell who will be taking you during drive time. We'll see you soon.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes.
I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes. I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, everybody. Jonathan Gullis here in the final segment before Peter Cardwell takes over at drive time from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk. I've been asking you over and over and over, would you be willing to give Labour a second chance? Would you be willing to see Labour win the next election if Shabana Mahmood delivers on the rhetoric, reduces the vote significantly, deports tens of thousands more people out of this country? And so far, we've had one text to say yes, but we believe that was a hoax because they were claiming to be from Broadmoor, which many of you have pointed out is a mental institution. So egg on my face there. But let's look at what more texts we've been having come in. I think it's been said before, the people on the boats are a sideshow. This and the previous government have let in 10 times the amount every year legally. Gary from Birmingham, still clearly not convinced because of the issue of legal migration. Another one, no, I will never vote for Labour after it has done nothing to help control illegal and legal migration since 1998, and its councils and MPs ignored and continue to ignore the rape gangs. If you complained about these issues, Labour and Starmer label you far right. They disgust me. That is from Jerry. Another one, Ian says, where is Keir Starmer? Is he in hiding from the voters or his own MPs? That's a great question. He has been certainly under the radar. I think he's having another foreign jaunt soon enough. Graham's texted in, I would never vote Labour, but I could see if Labour deported in excess of 50,000 illegal migrants, stop the boats and reduce migration to no more than 50,000 per annum, some people would give them another chance. High bar there for what Labour need to do to succeed. Hello, Jonathan. My worry about Labour sorting the immigration issue is the compromises that backbenchers will demand. OK, they stop the boats, but would the loony lefties demand the right to remain for all illegals in the country in some sort of amnesty, granting them the vote, and of course the elephant in the room, legal migration running red hot? Interesting perspective there. Brad in Cambridge. The proposal regarding polling centres at schools are a blatant attempt to avoid the Labour carnage we anticipate. I've worked in both universities and colleges, and they are simply training centres for Marxist activists. That's the news about Labour looking at trialling some different ideas when it comes to voting, including polling booths in schools and in universities, as well as allowing you to vote anywhere in your constituency. I think that will be the downfall of democracy. Another one here from Daniel. Actually, sorry, this is from Patricia. So we had Daniel call in from Epsom. We had Tarquin and Georgina from London. What a trio we had on there. As always, Daniel is absolutely spot on, says Patricia. Hope him, Georgina and Tarquin stand for election. Can't wait for the next general election when Nigel storms into Parliament. Kind regards. And another one here. The Tories have to have an agreement with Reform to stop Labour, Lib Dems and Greens from using tactical voting. The UK is finished if the left are in power. That's from Don in Chelmsford. Very interesting there after Kieran Mullen. Let's get working together, maybe. Centre-right working in the interest of the British people. Oh, interesting. Someone didn't like what Danny had to say. Danny's spouting as usual. Reform haven't got the election sewn up. They can't hold on to 5 MPs, let alone run our country. Be careful what you wish for. Very interesting there. Another one here from Craig in East Yorkshire. I wouldn't vote for Labour if they completely fix the immigration problem and boats because they'd still have Miliband shafting us with his net zero madness. OK, Labour, it's not going well, but let's try Robert in Hertfordshire. Hello, Robert, how are you?
I'm fine. First time we've spoken, Jonathan.
So, Robert, can I just ask, I'm hoping, my friend, you might be the first one to come on air on the call and say, you know what, I'm willing to give Labour the benefit of the doubt here, give them a second chance if they deliver.
No, I'll tell you what I'd like to do. I'd like to dissolve this Parliament this afternoon, straight away, before it gets any worse. You know, I've just about had enough of it. We're being run by Marxists. And the thing that annoys me is everybody's falling for this scam that the Home Secretary is coming out with. The reason she's pushing it is she knows that it's never going to go through. It just makes them look like they're trying. She's never going to get it past the backbenchers because they're all Marxists, and she's never going to get it past anywhere. But she knows that. Listen, it's quite easy to solve this problem. If you rang me up tonight, Jonathan, and you said, I've got all water pouring through my roof, I'd say the first thing you do is turn the water off. If you've got any problem, you stop it from getting any worse. And then you don't run around looking for buckets, you look where the stopcock is. So the first thing you need to do in this country is to stop them coming in first of all. because as we're speaking, they're landing on the beaches. So the first we have to, and actually, that's my thing for life. With any problem I have, the first thing we do, if I get my kids phoning me up and go, Dad, this is happening, that's happened, stop it from getting any worse. Then now you've got a little bit of breathing time. I used to say, I was a project manager at work. I'm retired now. But if any of my staff had a problem, right, what's the problem? First thing they do is stop it from getting any worse. And the first thing they do, this government, is to stop any more coming in. And that's quite simple, because what you've got to do, you've got to have the boats out by the shipping lines. You don't even let them put a foot on the sand. And we just keep them on them boats, and then we process them and sling them out. This is not going to happen. They're not serious. They know it's not going to fly. They know she knows that her idea is not going to fly. It's powder and paint, Jonathan.
Well, Robert, thank you for your call. Still no one here, but maybe Lenny, our last caller of this show today, maybe Lenny from Ashford might say, you know what, Shabana Mahmood, if she delivers what she's saying, I'll give Labour a second chance. Lenny, am I right or am I wrong?
Well, I've got two answers for you, mate. And that is the first one. If a dog is born in a stable, does it make it a horse?
No, it doesn't. No.
Right. And now, what it is, through my long life, I have met lots of people that was in the services whose children were born in the Commonwealth when they were serving abroad. And with English parents, with their children born in a foreign country, they still count themselves as English.
Yeah.
And the children as English.
Yeah.
And that is just, it's only common sense. And where you're born doesn't really make you, there's no right to claim that you're English because you were born here. You've got, if you say come from Afghanistan, if your parents have both come from Afghanistan, you've got Afghanistan genes in you and Afghan characteristics that are not English.
So, well, Lenny, thank you for your call there. Not convinced again by Shabana Mahmood's proposals. No one has been proposed. No one. I'm exhausted. I can't believe I couldn't find a single person. Well, I did find one person, but I think they were joking. Let's read out another text. Michelle from Rutland. Even if Labour stopped the boats 100%, I would still not vote Labour ever again. It's about the sliminess and this two-tier justice, the lying, the pensions, every decision they made is destroying our economy. It's the sleeves, it's the way they treat the farmers, the way they treat the British people. It's everything. They're just so bad, they're so toxic, and nothing they can do would ever get me and the majority of people in this country to vote or trust them ever again. Rob from London, I don't care what this useless Labour shower do. I've never, ever given them my vote. It's a misery living under them. It's not just about immigration. It's everything that is broken. It's a terrible mess, including the failing economy and inability to do anything that helps this. This lot are the enemy of us, the people. Ash, Croydon. Go on, Ash.
Hello, sir. I think, to be quite honest, you have to help me a bit. I've forgotten what I spoke to your colleague about.
Yes.
Was it Shabana Mahmood?
Yes. Do you give her a second? Do you think she's got the right? She's got it right.
Well, she's kicking the ball in the right direction, sir.
Yeah.
She definitely is, and it's been a long time coming. Hardly anyone has had the BALLS to talk like she spoke. So I give her 100% credit for that. But now, apparently there are some Labour MPs who are trying to put a spoke in the wheel. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Right. Now, what I was wondering is, I don't know who those Labour MPs are, but do they have a big ethnic constituency?
Yes.
Are they playing to the gallery?
Yes, well, indeed, Ash, thank you for your call there. And indeed, our Labour MPs playing to the gallery. Well, guess who will be playing to the gallery? He is the great drive time host here at the home of Common Sense Talk. His name is Mr. Peter Cardwell. He joins me in the studio before taking over.
Peter, I have the nicest introductions from you, Jonathan. You're so generous. My goodness,
Peter, I'm exhausted because I've asked relentlessly.
Yes.
Would anyone give Labour a second chance if they deliver? If they halve the small boats crossings, if they deport 50,000, and it has been every call no, every text no, every voice note no. I cannot believe, which I thought was a great day for Labour yesterday, first in a long time, and it's being poo-pooed on.
But so much trust has been lost already, as we've seen. We'll talk about this from all sides. Graham Stringer's going to join us in a second. He supports it, so it'll be very interesting to see what people think of what he has to say about all of this. Shabnam Mahmood certainly has had quite a lot to say about this, but there's so many people who just don't trust Labour and the Conservatives, I'm afraid, and many politicians. And I suppose the point is as well, they just want people to level with them and just say, look, we may need to put up taxes, for example, but here's why, and if we get good public services, maybe that's a good thing. We're talking to Jack Elsom as well. We'll talk about MPs being warned about Chinese espionage as well. That's happened over the last couple of hours. Tesco's decision to rename Christmas trees evergreen trees, unbelievable. Woke nonsense. I think it was, and there was another, I think it might have been Asda, who had hot cross buns, but they had a tick on them, which is just absurd. Also, the Office of National Statistics not able to get their ducks in a row and get the statistics right in terms of how many people are actually leaving this country. We'll talk as well about something that I know a decent amount about. Mark Francois will be on a little bit later on, the Conservative MP, Shadow Defence Minister, to talk about this Troubles legislation.
I was in there when we designed the building, the Conservative government. I was the PPS to Brandon Lewis at the time, so I'm very sad about this legislation.
Yeah, it's definitely a big change. We'll talk about the sport as well, and lots of other stuff as well.
Well, listen, tune in because it's another great show from Peter. The Northern Ireland Legacy Bill might not affect lots of people in this country.